Hello and welcome to the SRO Esports GT Series. We've got another pair of 1 hour races coming up for you this afternoon. One for the Pro class, which is our professional racing drivers, and one for the Silver class, which is for the sim racers. My name is Jack Nichols. We've been joined as ever by David Addison, Ben Constanduris and John Watson to bring you the coverage of these races today. And this is round 4 of this SRO Esports GT series. The final round will be coming up in 3 weeks' time on the 21st of June. So what happens today is really going to implicate what happens in the championship over the rest of the season. So as I say, we'll be starting off with our drivers in the Pro class, the real world races that you'll have seen in the GT World Challenge powered by AWS, maybe last couple of years or coming up later this year with any luck. And then we'll be moving on to the Silver class for the top sim races, which is really one to watch out for. Let's bring in David Addison, shall we, on this. Very good afternoon, David. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Looking forward to another 2 hours of racing around Barcelona.
Jack, it's going to be another excellent 2 1-hour races. We've seen great competition, haven't we, within the Pro class already. The Silvers have perhaps on occasions shown the real world drivers how to do it. We've had 3 races, 3 different winners, both in Pro and in Silver. Now we come to yet another different venue, and the conditions set to be really hot, so tyre management is going to be important, front, left tyre particularly. I think we're going to be in for another fascinating day of racing, and as you rightly say, we're getting towards the crunch point now as far as the championship is concerned. Keeping out of trouble, banking points today is going to be vital.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date with the championship order in a moment. The top 6 really breaking away up at the front of the main title contenders. But lying in 7th place is David Perel, who's had a good season so far, very consistent, and he has launched Coach Dave, which is a strategic initiative for him to help racing drivers both in the real world and in the simulator world. Let's take a look. So that's Coach Dave Academy, who are partnering with us for this SRO Esports GT series. Now, as far as the main championship is concerned for the pro drivers, Ben Barnicoat won last time out at the Nürburgring. He's now got a 9-point lead over Louis Delatraz at the top of the championship. And Delatraz has been pretty consistent throughout the championship so far. He's the only driver to have scored points in all 4 races, but he hasn't yet taken a victory. But, David, he's had a very strong qualifying session.
And he lines up on pole position, doesn't he? So Louis Delatraz has been doing exactly the right thing, banking points, scoring where he needs to. Also, by not being an outright winner, he's also been able to stay the right side of making that Porsche really lardy, because the better you do, the more weight the brand carries, not just you as a driver, but the whole brand, everybody's car within that brand for the next race. So yes, he's going to have 17 extra kilos in the Porsche, but it seemingly has not been a big handicap in qualifying. What's going to be fascinating, though, is that lining up alongside him is a newcomer to the championship, Federico Leo, former European GT3 champion. So he's coming into this without any points as far as the championship is concerned, and he's here really for pride. He wants to show just how good he is.
Yeah, he's in with the mix of the championship contenders. We'll bring you down through all of them over the course of the next hour or so. Let's bring in John Watson, 5-time Formula 1 Grand Prix winner, and of course the voice of the GT World Challenge alongside David. Watty, good afternoon. How are you looking forward to Barcelona?
Well, I'm delighted we got a Porsche lockout in the front row of the grid, and I will be even more delighted if we see a Porsche taking that checkered flag. I don't mind which of the 2 drivers it is, but one thing that is impressing is Louis Delatraz has been consistent and competitively consistent over the 3 rounds we've had so far. What also is of interest is further down the field, in 11th place, as the 6th row of the grid, is our championship leader Ben Barnicoat in a McLaren. McLaren carrying an additional weight this weekend, another 25 kilograms. And we know, certainly we saw this in one of the earlier rounds, Spa, to some degree at Nürburgring, the weight penalty seems to be a bigger penalty in sim racing than it is in real racing. Now, whether that's going to be the case here this weekend, this afternoon, for Ben Barnicoat, it's going to be difficult. Though it's one of the toughest overtaking circuits on the calendar, can he find a way from the 6th row of the grid to get up to the front of the field by the time the checkered flag falls?
Well, let's take a closer look at this Barcelona circuit that you mentioned, John. This is the Bentley Fanatec onboard lap, and this is your track guide with Danny Kloss.
Kloss, and I am racing with K-Pax Racing by SRO Esports with the Bentley Continental GT3, and this is my lap at my home track, Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. I hope you enjoy it.
Here, let's take a deep breath to start the lap. First corner, deep braking into third gear, maintaining the right of the curb for a good exit from turn 1 to turn 2. Be early on power. Turn 3, short shifting to fourth, keeping the inside line for an early throttle application. Here you need to be on power early. Use the whole track, the whole width of the track. And going into turn 4, quite deep, and it's important to stay on the inside for a better traction and steering straight. Going into turn 5, second gear, be patient and using the momentum to accelerate straight. Here is important the exit as there is this downhill. Going down to third gear into seventh corner. Use the rolling of the car and early on power because it's important to be good on exit as it's an uphill corner. Turn 9, fourth gear, early on power. Important to not lose the apex because there's a long straight coming. Here also take another deep breath and big braking into the first corner for turn 10 and early on power. As turning lever, you need to be a little bit clipping the inside curb and be really patient for turn 12. Any mistake can make you lose a lot. Turn 13, there's only one line. You cannot slide the car. Going into this chicane, first gear, shifting into second and full throttle to the last corner, where you need to be also quite precise and finishing the lap.
So that is your Fanatec track guide around this Barcelona circuit. The race will be getting underway in just a little under 5 minutes' time, with Louis Delatraz starting on pole position, Federico Leo in second place, and Ben Barnicoat down in 11th position. But let's take a look at the entry list that we've got for these two races, the pro drivers and also for the silver class for the sim racers, because it's once again another bumper entry list, isn't it? It's going to be really great to see all these drivers out on the track, and we've got the likes of Lorenzo Marcucci out there, Ivan Pereiras for Phoenix Racing, Alex Buncombe, Seb Morris, Jordan Pepper. I've been really impressed, David, at how many of the sort of real world racers have got stuck into this sim racing stuff in the sort of the enforced off season.
And not only one championship, many of them, and Barnicoat's an example, they're doing multiple championships, often 2 or 3 in a day. They're doing one race and then disappearing off to go and race on a different platform in a different championship a little bit later on. But Ben Barnicoat, the pro championship leader, who you can hear from in the first episode of The Pit Lane, the new SRO podcast, was saying when we interviewed him how seriously he's taking it and how he goes about doing the preparation for sim work and how little you do actually for your job as a McLaren factory driver because you've got lots of testing available. So whereas in some categories there's minimal testing, sim work's quite important. When you've got quite a lot of testing to do, you're doing less on the sim. So he's learning about it, whereas other drivers are perhaps more experienced. But he is enjoying it, and that's borne out by the fact that he's the championship leader.
And he's got the boss in the race today as well.
Yeah, Zach Brown is the wild card. He's a pretty accomplished driver. He's raced in Formula 4, Formula 3 in the UK, had a good few years off, came back to found United Autosports with Richard Dean and race again in British GT, and he's raced in historic Grand Prix cars. Zach Brown is the wild card, and he's at the back of the grid. So I'm sure Zach's excuse would be that he's letting all the factory drivers and all the customers look good, and he's just there to make sure that all is well and take an overview of the situation. But admittedly, it's from the back of the grid.
Ben Constanduras, I've seen Zach doing quite a few races on various different platforms over the last few weeks. It's good to have him here.
He's got a mega rig as well. He's really got the all the bits and pieces you need to have a good race, a safe race with the 3 screens. And he has a fleet of real world, incredible race cars. I think he was one of the first people to ever be a customer of McLaren for a Formula 1 car. He bought the Mika Hakkinen 98 championship winner. And that was a very fast car they ever sold. So he is a competent race driver. He'll be a safe race driver, but it's a different world trying to get up to the pace of these guys in the sim world. So great to have him with us, a real coupe. And he's replacing, of course, Jenson Button, who's finally taking a day out of sim racing. But it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on.
And we are looking now at the last couple of minutes of qualifying from earlier on today, which saw Louis Delatraz seal pole position. This is Matteo Bobby we're watching at the moment. But Ben, we saw rain last time out in the Nürburgring. It looks like we've got a nice sunset situation here rather than the rain of Germany.
Absolutely. The Nürburgring tends to be wet and cold, and so that's exactly what it was, although actually it wasn't that cold. Looking at track conditions for this race, we're looking at, a start time of 6 o'clock in the evening, but we're looking at 35 degrees air temperature and 45 degrees track temperature. So that is something to consider. It's very unique to ACC that simulates the tyre reactions so well, and therefore the drivers will have to be mindful of their setup and how they pace themselves across this 1 hour.
You can see that Louis Delatraz had provisional pole position with still a decent amount of time left on the clock. At that time, it was Marcucci in second and Federico Leo in third, so he got a last-minute good lap in to jump up into second place, did Federico Leo. It's good to see, David, all of the title protagonists there in the top 10. Delatraz second in the championship, starting at the front. You've also got Marcucci, Di Lorenzo's in 10th, Ivan Pereiras is in 4th, so we're going to see it all unfold in front of us, which I don't think we've seen this year yet, because quite often the drivers who did well in the last race are sort of in the mid to late teens, whereas everybody now is kind of gathering around that top 10.
Yeah, I think this is partly because this is the circuit where seemingly the extra weight doesn't have quite the same effect as it would have done at Spa with the big climbs and, again, the undulating nature of the Nürburgring. We're at a slightly flatter circuit, so maybe the weight counts less. But yeah, Ben Barnicoat, championship leader, will start 11th. The majority of the other stars in the title race are ahead of him, so he's got work to do. But, and we keep touching on this, you've got to keep out of trouble. So even though you've got Delatraz on row 1, Marcucci on row 2, Jordan Pepper, for example, on row 4, they've all got to get through turns 1, 2 and 3, that pinch point, safely. It didn't happen at the Nürburgring. It just about happened at Spa. There was contact at Silverstone on the opening lap. So even if Ben is 11th, he could still gain a whole heap of places by the end of the first lap, but he could get involved in somebody else's dramas. So stay out of trouble. Everybody on that first lap, you've got an hour to do the battling. Try and avoid one another.
This is on board with Federico Leo as he came through the final couple of corners, running in third, managed to get that Porsche up into second, despite that little moment of oversteer coming out and through the final corner. So it will be a Porsche 1-2, Louis Delatraz and Federico Leo on the front of the grid. Watty, how important, as we look at the championship, the qualifying times overall, how important is it to keep out of trouble at turn 1, and how much does that change when you're in a championship fight? Are you just a little bit less aggressive into the first corner, or do you have to keep doing what you've been doing the whole year?
Well, Ben Barnicoat's in the position because he's on the 6th row of the grid, whereas Louis Delatraz, who's second in the championship, is on pole position. So he's got the principal advantage. He can turn to control the race, whereas Ben Barnicoat has got to be aware of traffic. And one of the difficulties is in sim racing, you haven't got the level of peripheral vision that you have in a race car. But just something, looking at the timing and scoring from the qualifying, to show how close this field is, the top 35 cars are covered by less than. And the slowest car, we've mentioned this before, Zach Brown. Now remember, McLaren is carrying a 25 kilogram weight penalty, on top of which Zach is carrying his own weight penalty. I suspect in these very hot conditions at Barcelona, he may well shed a kilo or 10 before this race finishes.
Well, on that note, I don't really know what to say, so it's time to hand
Jack,
over.
you always know what to say.
Not to you, Watty, never to you. Right, thank you very much for that. The cars are on their formation lap now, making their way around to the grid. The first of 2 1-hour races coming up. The first one is for the pro drivers. After this, we'll have a race for the silver drivers, which are some of the top sim racers in the world. But let's hand it over to our commentary team, Ben Constant-Juras, John Watson, and of course, David Addison.
Jack, thanks. Let's go racing, everybody. Round 4 then of the SRO GT series, this esports championship that has given fantastic racing thus far. More of the same set to come here at just after 6 o'clock local time, Barcelona. It's a Porsche lockout at the front of the grid. Louis Delatraz then in the Gulf colours, the GPX Racing liveried car, with newcomer to the series, Federico Leo, former European GT3 champion, Italian GT champion, International GT Open champion, lining up alongside him. Federico Leo is certainly no stranger to GT racing. It's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on. Lorenzo Marcucci shares row 2 with Ivan Pereiras. Arthur Rougier is on row 3 with Simone De Luca. Then it's Ezequiel Perez Companc and Jordan Pepper on the next row, ahead of Michael O'Brien and Luigi De Lorenzo to round out the top 10. Championship leader Ben Barnicoat goes from 11th. David Perel, who is 7th in the championship, goes from 13th. Andy Soucek, who is 9th in the championship, he will go from 19th. So a lot of drivers are going to have to be on their toes, but this is going to be a fascinating race, no doubt about that, as the cars now work their way down towards the completion of this formation lap. See the way that Federico Leo is jinking around, trying to make sure that he's got the tire temperatures and pressures where he wants them. But keep an eye to that Audi though, number 188, Lorenzo Marcucci, because he was the very impressive winner at Spa, and we'll see how he fares here then as the cars make their way up towards the completion of this formation lap, ready for 1 hour of racing. Is everybody going to be able to keep out of trouble through the first couple of corners? Well, time will tell. Down they come now then towards the turn 14-15 chicane, and then they will get themselves in this 2x2 Noah's Ark style formation, ready for the rolling start. The race director, Peter Roberts, if he's happy, will give the instruction for the race to get underway. Of course, wriggling out of the chicane and getting back into formation is not the work of a moment. So Federico Leo now on the outside line has to pull up level with Louis Delatraz, who led the majority of that last race at the Nürburgring, lost out late race to Ben Barnicoat. He wants to redress that here and score a maiden victory in the SRO GT series, the Esports Pro Series round 4 then set to get underway as the lights go green. It's a good start by Delatraz, then Leo slots in behind him on the run down towards turn 1. The red Audi of Ivan Pereiras comes up on the outside line to have a go at Marcucci. Delatraz covers off the inside on this long pit straight down towards turn 1, 3 wide. Marcucci in the Audi on the outside. There's one car off on the inside, and chaos, I fear, is about to ensue. Yes, it has, because cars scatter all over the shop in avoidance. And there's more mayhem. Look, Aston Martin getting involved. Lots and lots of cars off the road. We'll come to that in a moment. As up front, Delatraz leads the way. But, John, drama at turn 1.
Well, it was not unexpected. And I think it could have been Ben Barnicoat we saw. Should have been turning left. Hopefully that wasn't his car. But a clean start from Delatraz and from Leo. So they've gained the advantage. But the car I want to keep an eye on is Marcucci, because he has done a strong job running third in the championship. He knows if he can maintain that third spot, all he has to do is stay in third to keep him very much in the championship hunt.
I have a horrible feeling that Ben Barnicoat did get caught up in all of that, possibly also Jordan Pepper. Ben will dive into the game and have a look and try and unravel who we've lost already. We've got drive-throughs though being off and up. Scott Mulvern and Chris Froggatt being given early drive-throughs for either a jump start or track limit abuse, as through there goes Pereiras. So Froggatt and Mulvern, Ferrari and Bentley drivers respectively, attracting the attention of the in-game penalties early doors. But Louis Delatraz then leads. He's trying to break clear to the tune of almost half a second already, except scrap that. Leo is right on his tail then now as they come down towards the chicane, up towards the end of the opening lap. It's Porsche 1, Porsche 2. 1 lap about to go in the book here at Barcelona as they come up now onto the pit straight. So the Porsches carrying 17 extra kilos come over the line. Then you've got the Audis running third and fourth, with at the moment Marcucci just ahead of Arthur Rougier, and then in fact Audi fifth as well. You've got Ivan Pereiras. Don't forget the Audis are ballast free, so that might play into their hands as the race wears on. Now let's have a look at the replay of the start, John. Cars all over the place.
I noticed that in the middle of the pack you can see that blue and black McLaren. That's the car. Oh, somebody went absolutely down the inside. No braking whatsoever. I think maybe one of the Aston Martins. So that would look like a mechanical failure coming into turn 1 from one of the midfield pack cars. Now that didn't contact with the McLaren of Ben Barnicoat. Maybe he had something just on the second part of the turn 1, turn 2 complex.
Well, certainly it's bad news for Ben Barnicoat, because that's dropped him down into 19th place. Those drive-throughs I was just mentioning have been rescinded by race control, so the game put those in, but Peter Roberts, the race director, Richard Norman, the steward, overruled them, and so those two drivers, Chris Froggatt, Scott Mulvin, can carry on. So back to the plot. Louis Delatraz leads half a second to the good of Federico Leo, but now the danger is looking like Marcucci, isn't it? Because there he is, latching onto the tail of the two Porsches, and Federico Leo might be new to this championship, but he's right there on the tail of Delatraz as they come now up round the loop at turn 12. So Delatraz, like we saw at the Nürburgring, leading but not escaping into the distance. Down they come. Yeah.
But David, I have to think that Leo is actually the quicker of these two Porsches. Delatraz, who's now, in a sense, backing up the second place Federico Leo, and that's allowing Marcucci to keep in contact. And you point out, the Audis are running without ballast, the Porsches are carrying 17 kilograms. Marcucci, this is on board with Leo, looking for a way, defense from Delatraz, down the outside, coming into turn 1 and 2 for Leo. Not a place you can make a pass, but what you want to try and do is wrong foot Delatraz to get him to use parts of the racetrack he doesn't want to in defence and open up the opportunities. Maybe into turn 4, just on the exit of 3, coming down into turn 4. Leo a little bit too far behind to make that move down the inside. Delatraz covers it off, he gets in cleanly. He's got a little bit more breathing space just in the space of the exit of turn 3 into turn 4.
And that brings Marcucci up onto the back of Leo, or a little bit closer at least. Now, Ben Constanturis has been having a look at what went on the opening lap. Ben, who did we lose? Who's gained? Who's lost out? What can you tell us?
I was trying to work out who that Lamborghini was, because it really completely missed his braking point and went straight across the track at turn 1. Kind of a separate incident to what we saw happen at turn 3. Haven't been able to identify the exact car, but Vittorio Liuzzi was one of the drivers that came into pit lane. He is in a Lamborghini. Jordan Pepper was hit in the turn 3 incident. He is still in pit lane, so this could be a retirement from Jordan Pepper. We also saw in pit lane Michael O'Brien, Luigi De Lorenzo, Zach Brown's in pits, Romain Monti, James Pull as well, and Ben Barnicoat was turned around, but I think light contact, he's down in 18th right now.
Yeah, he's just gained a place, in fact, hasn't he? So he is picking his way up the order, which is good to see, but he's outside the points. Remember, points for the top 10. Louis Delatraz leads the race, second in the championship, so this is looking pretty good for him on a point haul. Try and keep an eye to the points as the race unfolds. There's a lot to shake out of this yet then as they come over the timing line. Getting a replay of other dramas from earlier on in the race as well here.
I'm looking at one of the McLarens coming down into turn 1, and there you see that was the second. The McLaren's running wide in the exit of turn 1 and compromising his, and there's going to be a contact back now. This is the battle at the front, and Delatraz has actually consolidated his advantage marginally, and it's now Leo who's coming under the pressure of Lorenzo Marcucci, and he's got Arthur Rougier. You've got a quartet of Audis backing up, are trying to get into the battle with this two Porsche train that's currently leading with 53 minutes to go.
And then behind them, you've got Simone De Luca 6th, Dan Wells going great guns as ever in 7th, Ben Tusting, another impressive effort by him, 8th, David Perel is up into 9th place now, having started 13th, and Ezequiel Perez Companc, who got his first points last time out, is in 10th place, but now it's game on for the race lead. Leo there, all over the back of Delatraz, Marcucci all over the back of Leo, he goes to the outside line, this is for second place, and Leo tries to squirt up alongside Delatraz. Marcucci gets roughed up, forced out wide all over the curb. Here comes Rougier. He goes third. Yes. Arthur Rougier gains the place, John.
He read it very well because that was an error on the part of Marcucci. He was never going to go around the long way around the outside, down the hill into turn 10. So he's lost that third position. And it could have been second had he maybe been a little bit more patient. Again, for some reason, Delatraz lost a huge amount of time. Okay, maybe half a second. But it allowed Leo to get right onto the rear wing of the Porsche coming through turn 9, and then it all began to sort of spread out coming down the hill into turn 10, and that's where Rougier, who's under attack now from Marcucci, he wants that third place back, and I think he might have done enough as he side by side into turn 1. It's the transition into turn 2. He's done it. He's managed to get that third place back. Strong race from Marcucci, and we're only 7 minutes into it.
But have a look at what's going on behind as well, because Pereiras, now 5th, has been caught by De Luca, and he's taking Wells, Tusting, Perel, Companc with him. So The battle pack for the lead suddenly is growing as people battle, squabble, delay themselves. Delatraz still leads the way by 3/10, so for the moment at least, Leo with limited pressure can concentrate on catching the Porsche ahead. Marcucci being delayed in this squabble that he's having with Arthur Rougier.
Yeah, but Marcucci has now got through into third place, and he will now reset, think about what have I got to do to catch up to the second place Porsche, get onto the rear wing. It was only a little over a lap ago here in turn 9 that it looked like Marcucci might be the driver who was going to take second place, because he was in a battle with the lead and Leo. Now down into turn 10, the gaps are sort of equidistant. As you go further down, this is Zach Brown. Hiya, Zach. How does it feel out there? Sweating like a racehorse, are we?
Well, he's back in the race after his pit stop, turning his way then now up through the little S, heading up the hill. In the meantime, Michael Grenier has been given a drive-through penalty and 3 penalty points for causing a multiple collision turn 1, lap 1. So I think it was Grenier's car that we saw going off the road. Ben, yeah?
Absolutely, it was. But he had his middle screen of his 3 screens shut down. So he had absolutely no vision going into that first turn. Almost worse than having a bonnet flick up in front of you in the windscreen.
Did he not have any brakes at all? Did not use the brakes to slow down? Or is that an optional extra on his car?
Again, we've said this before, Ben, over the course of the championship, but it's amazing educating John and I with these different things, like your screen goes dead or the internet disconnects, all these new reasons for retirement or causing an incident. But yes, a completely black screen, I can imagine, would be a bit of a handicap. Now, Federico Leo has a handicap in as much as he's got Marcucci back on his tail here, John. The gap's down again, 2nd to 3rd.
As I said, this race got underway. Keep your eyes on Marcucci. In fact, keep your eyes on any of these 4 Audis that are filling from 3rd place down to 6th place, because they are competitive here in Barcelona. They're all running nose to tail. Marcucci did lose that 3rd place, regained it. He's now refocusing on getting under the tail of Leo. But look at Rougier all over the back of Marcucci. I thought Marcucci was the lead Audi. Arthur Rougier may well be, in terms of pace, the quickest of this quartet of Audis.
And did we not just have a big slide 3 corners back from Simone De Luca's Audi? Yes, we did. So Dan Wells, look, he's up into the top 6. Dan, much underrated British driver, based doing lots of his racing in China, Hong Kong, but Dan, very, very good, underrated, quick Brit, and he's into the top 6. As for the race lead, Delatraz, yet again, he's going to have to stick out his elbows and make that Porsche 911 as wide as he possibly can, because he's got Federico Leo now breathing down his neck. Marcucci runs 3rd, Rougier 4th, small gap back to 5th, Pereiras in the red Phoenix liveried Audi, gap back to 6th place, Dan Wells, and 7th now Ezequiel Perez Compact, going better than ever in esports. Really good to see him working his way up the order. This is a replay of McLaren's getting themselves together, and David Perel involved in that as well.
Down at the exit, back to the battle at the very front of the field. Still Delatraz controlling it and managing to control Federico Leo, who is the driver in the Porsche. I think was the quicker of the 2 Porsche drivers here this afternoon, but it is ultimately Lorenzo Marcucci and Arthur Rougier who will, I suspect, one way or the other, find a way through, because they have got more natural pace. As we watch one of the Bentleys, was that Monty? Oh, I can't quite tell. Certainly coming out of turn 3, running wide and almost taking the... Can't see the assessment from others.
Might have been Andy Suchek, in fact. He was running with him or near him on the road. We're getting another drive-through. This is for Fabrizio Crestani for an incident with Scott Mulvern on the opening lap of the race. So as you look here at the recovering De Luca after his big slide of a few laps back, of a lap ago, that's put him down to 8th place. You're on board with David Perel, Coach Dave, and he lines up to have a go on the inside. Job done, goes through. Does he go wide into the corner? Well, he does run it out wide.
No, all a bit untidy, a bit messy, and a bit, how's your father? So 3 cars on the exit of turn 10, and that was a big move by David Perel. I mean, I don't know whether that's in his coaching book or not, Coach Dave. Anyway, maybe he invented it just on that single lap to make a move, and whether he really got away with it or not, he's still illustrated or showing as being in 9th position. Fuminelli and the sister Ferrari directly behind him, and then Nicky Hildebrand in the 3rd of the 3 Ferraris in 11th place.
But the one that lost out in all of that was Simone De Luca, Ben, wasn't it? Because his was the Audi we saw effectively being elbowed out into the gravel.
Yeah, and there will be damage on all three of those cars, and the drivers will feel that. We may not see it, but they will feel the lack of pace and will not necessarily have a complete 100% performing car. I've been keeping an eye on Ben Barnicoat's lap times to see exactly where he's at. Okay. He's about a second slower than our leaders. He's in 15th position, but he is carrying a little bit of damage on his car. So a little bit of points is all that he can hope for.
Replay here of that hip and shoulder moment that fired De Luca across the gravel and put David Perel down in 10th place. David Firminelli up to 8th. Nick Hildebrand up into 9th spot, and Nicholas Hildebrand pressing on, trying to gain further ground then as the cars head downhill once more. So that was 3 into 1, would not go, but of them, David Firminelli was the one that came out best. Now this is the lead battle, it's still 3 for the race lead. Marcucci not being dropped by the Porsches. Equally, Delatraz can't escape, John, can he? Yes, he stays ahead, but he just can't shake off Leo.
No, and I go back to what I said at the very early phase of the race. I think that Leo is the quicker of the two Porsche drivers in Barcelona this weekend, but he's being pursued by the quick of the two Porsches ahead. That's Marcucci. So it looks to me, still repeating myself, that it is the Porsches leading, but not on pace. It's because they were pole position. They got that pole position, and I've dived down the inside, and that one came off this time for David Perel. No contact in turn 15. And into turn 16. So the Porsche is pulling, but not literally in the sense the quickest cars in the field.
Alex Buncombe having a good run. He's about to break into the points. Look here in the Bentley, goes through on the inside of Nicholas Hildebrand down towards turn 1. The Ferrari comes up to have a go back on the outside line under braking. Can Alex Buncombe do it? Yes, he can. The Bentley boy goes through on the inside. Hildebrand takes to the escape road, rattles over the curb, gets back onto the road. Bentley stays ahead. So Alex Buncombe maintains 10th place with Nicholas Hildebrand all over the back of him here.
Yeah, he had to concede because he got ahead of Buncombe, but conceded the position. So Buncombe back ahead, but the Ferrari, again, very quick car, and he will not waste time sitting behind Alex Buncombe. Just a point of interest, and Alex Buncombe, his brother Chris, was originally, once Jensen decided to withdraw from the 22 McLaren, it was going to be Chris was in the car, but because Chris and Alex Buncombe share the sim unit that they have in their home, only one driver could use it that weekend. That's Alex Buncombe, who's in the Bentley. So Chris is sitting this one out, and that's the reason why Zach then was invited to take the seat in the number 22 McLaren.
And what's a little curious about that as well, Watty, is that within their team that they will be competing in real world, they have a very fast simulator driver taking his first steps into real world motorsport, having won the world's fastest Gamer 2 competition. James Baldwin is a master on the sim, but hasn't yet featured in this championship. So within their armory, Jensen has a guy that probably could wipe the floor out of most of this, but they've decided not to use him.
I think there were obviously very clear reasons why the decisions were made. And because Alex couldn't do it, Chris couldn't do it, and then Zach was available. He has got experience, and of course, a great opportunity for the boss of the Formula One team to show his ability behind the wheel in a sim race.
Now, as far as second and third is concerned, Federico Leo is still just ahead of Lorenzo Marcucci. You're riding with Marcucci. Delatraz still leads the way. He's still not out of danger, though, is he? I mean, to win, you only need to win by 1,000th of a second, but he still has a modest advantage over Federico Leo, who might be new to the championship, but he's driving like a sim veteran. Marcucci third. Looks now, John, as though he's shaken off Rouget's earlier challenge, doesn't he, for third place?
Yeah, I mean, Marcucci now consolidate that third position. He lost it briefly. He's got it back again. He's giving all the pressure he can provide to the rear of Federico Leo, and the Porsche comes through turn 9. So watch the move down. Leo looks, the lead Porsche gets back into line. Marcucci does a similar thing. Just out of interest to me, where, he was up into the top 10. What's happened to Ben Barnicoat? He's down to 15th. He did get up to 10th place on this lap somewhere, but back down to 15th. So don't know what that story's all about.
So I fear he might have had a moment. Ben Constanduras can go and investigate that for us, and we in the meantime have a look at the top two together. See the gap just open up ever so slightly coming out of the chicane, but Marcucci was with them under braking, so Delatraz ticks off another lap as he goes by now then. Heads down towards turn one. This, the view from on board with Federico Leo, inching up onto the tail of Delatraz on this long pit straight down towards turn one. The House Formula One tester, Louis Delatraz, who's done a bit of GT racing, but largely single-seaters in his career, holds sway for the moment.
And he's done a pretty good job so far this season. And the thing I know principally is continuity and consistency, and that is the way you're going to win this championship. But under great pressure from Federico Leo in the yellow and black Porsche, who likewise is on his toes, because you got Lorenzo Marcucci just waiting for one little opportunity. He'll have that Audi's nose either alongside or down the inside to try and take second place away, and if he can do so, then he will be able to further put pressure on race leader. Whether he can find a way past, I mentioned the top 35 were covered by under 2 seconds. The top 20 were covered by less than 1 second. And this is what you're saying. There is so little difference performance-wise between these lead cars. It's almost impossible, other than you force an issue rather than just simply a good judgment and overtake.
Well, the top
Ben
three
Barnicoat
has won again. Yes, it's gone, Ben.
Ben Barnicoat, I think, was a timing glitch to see him up in 10th position. He has just made a position up, though. He's now in 14th, ahead of Nicholas Nielsen, and he has a 4-car battle just ahead of him. So that's going to be quite an interesting thing. In fact, it's just the tail of this 4 cars that you can see. There's Ben just in the top of the screen. So he's got a lot of traffic to get past, but he could be in the top 10 pretty soon. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Danny Kloss. We just saw him doing our track guide, but we haven't actually seen him in this championship so far. And indeed, we haven't seen him in real world GT World Challenge. In fact, we haven't really seen him in real world racing for years. You may remember he was GP2 for ADAX and Formula 3 Euro Series back in the day. He's now a very successful YouTuber with over 800,000 subscribers to his channel. Still does a little bit of racing over in America, but not a lot.
Interestingly, Nicky Hildebrand's found a way past Alex Buncombe. We saw Buncombe made a pass here a couple of laps ago. Hildebrand ran wide, but he's managed once again. There is that move as we speak. So he's taken the. No, that was the original Buncombe overtake on the Ferrari. Oh no, this is probably current time. So the Bentley has now yet again, for the second time this afternoon, overtaken Nicholas Hildebrand in the Ferrari.
So you see all the great scrap going on for position at the bottom end of the top 10, and while they're tripping over each other like this, that's bringing Ben Barnicoat a little bit closer to them. Buncombe then running wide, losing the spot but briefly to Hildebrand. Then he fights back. Behind them is Chris Froggatt in the Tempesta Racing Sky liveried Ferrari, having his best sim experience of the championship thus far. And Barnicoat with clear road ahead of him until he catches this quartet inching up on the back. Now, having said a lap or so ago that Arthur Rougier was being dropped by the top 3, scrap that, he's almost back with Marcucci. So once more we have this quarrelling quartet for the race lead as they come down towards turn 14 through the chicane once again. Delatraz hangs on the position. Leo second, attacking, defending all the time. And Marcucci, don't forget, is another driver like Delatraz thinking about banking points. He's third in the championship, comes across the line, and we still don't yet know where that final round is going to be as the leaders go by then.
And it's down into turn 1 yet again. That lead 4-car train pulling out a significant gap now on Carreras in 5th, and Danwell's slightly further back in 6th place. So what had been a tight, maybe 6 or 7 car bunch, suddenly the pace at the front, these lead 4 cars beginning to make an impact on the rest of the field. As we look at Ben Barnicoat coming down into turn 1, Ben Barnicoat up into still in 14th place. He's just on the Audi De Luca. So Ben Barnicoat will be in that momentum, maintain it, and try and find a way quickly as possible get ahead of the Audi.
But his disappointment as far as the championship is concerned is that even if he breaks into the top 10, his main rival Delatraz leads the way. So for Barnicoat, chances for the championship. He could do with Federico Leo getting up and past Delatraz, maybe one or two others getting through as well. Trouble is, one of those, Marcucci, is another driver who has the opportunity to win this championship. So Ben needs to get a wriggle on, and he knows that. Others, though, need to have bad fortune up the road, I think, to really help him. That's Issa Al Khalifa, came from the pure McLaren GT series into this, and there is the race lead battle. Now remember, we saw at the Nürburgring, Delatraz was able to defend, not quite to the very end, but he defended against Barnicoat for a very long time, and he's got to do it again here, except this time he is trying to keep Federico Leo at bay.
Yeah, and there's also, they're both in the same brand, same car, identical specifications, so Delatraz has got in the tank is exactly the same as Leo has got in his tank. And this time the challenge is coming not from the McLaren, because Barnicoat got taken out in turns 1 and 2, but from the 3rd and 4th placed Audis, who are they're just hovering. They're just waiting for either the Porsche drivers to maybe end up using. Look at Leo again, very, very close to the tail of Delatraz coming through turn 3, thinking about it. Turn 4 is a place where you can make a pass, but it's difficult. You've got to be so, rather than trying to make a lunge down the inside to make it a successful overtake.
So 4 for the race lead. It is still Delatraz just ahead then for the moment as they drop down the hill. Federico Leo's Porsche second, then it's Audi 3rd, 4th and 5th, with Ivan Pereiras running then in that 5th spot. But at the moment, Ben, it seems as though Pereiras in 5th is a little bit stuck. Even though the top 4 are squabbling, he's not benefiting, he's not really gaining, is he, in that red Audi?
Yeah, he's kind of matching the pace of that lead group, so he's not being able to really pull into them, but at the same time, not losing too much time, unlike Dan Wells, who last time through was a whole second slower than the group ahead of him. And there's a couple of guys behind Dan who are running at lead pace. So it's an interesting little group there. And I wonder whether we're seeing a bit of pacing going on, because track temperature is still 36 degrees. Obviously, as we get later into the evening, there is less direct sun contact onto the tarmac. So we are actually, the track is cooling rather than heating up, but it's still 34 degrees air temperature. And I think they really do need to be concerned about temperatures in brakes, but also making sure their tyres can last this race and not too much sliding around. The best ones who've set the cars up well will be making the best of that situation. But of course, too much sliding, too much pushing is also going to wear out your tyres more as well.
Well, Ben, you must know from history that Barcelona is the most fickle racetrack in the calendar in terms of time differential from morning to midday to evening. You've got a variation of maybe 2 or 3 seconds. It's just one of those unique features here in Barcelona. So everybody is in the same boat, but of course the variation will come from how have you set your car up. Have you set your car up to be competitive in the early phases of the race to get track position, or for the latter part of the race where you can benefit from those that are maybe beginning to fail in this warm, very warm evening conditions?
And one of the cars that's been good towards the end of the test races that have been happening in the week has been the Ferrari. So David Pirelli is 8th. So what progress could he make? I mean, we're not yet at halfway, but we are looking ahead here. What could he do by the very end as the leaders come down towards us then? So with 14 laps in the book, it is still Delatraz in the lead, this tiny, tiny advantage that he's got. And they're in second spot, Leo. Now under attack, isn't he? Marcucci, I think this time, perhaps fancies his chances of finding a way through. The Audi seems to be good through the corners. The Porsche better in a straight line. Down towards the chicane they come. This is turn 13. It's a 16-turn lap through that very tight chicane. Get it wrong there, you compromise the run through this corner, of course, and you lose the momentum coming onto the pit straight. The Porsche gets its power down nicely out of the chicane despite the extra weight, and so Leo stretches that advantage once again. Look, so in a straight line, Marcucci is 2-3 lengths back, John.
Yeah, it's critical, that final chicane. The Porsche seems to be marginally better on the exit of 15 into the final turn onto pit straight 16, so that just opens up the advantage maybe by those 2 or 3 car lengths you have mentioned. Now we're down into turn 3, beginning another lap, coming around again. The difference between the 2 cars is probably, well, just the difference between the fundamental setups of the cars. But Delatraz, what he's doing, he did this at the final laps when Ben Barnicoat did finally get through. Delatraz is proving to me to be an extremely canny race driver. He's doing what he needs to do to he's not really opened up an opportunity for Leo and the to get through. And in the process of doing this, it is allowing Marcucci and Rouget to stay in touch. So Delatraz driving with his head maybe more than his feet.
Could well be. So far, so good. They're coming towards us. Keep an eye on the lead battle. Ben, can I draw your attention back to Danny Kloss for a moment? You were talking about him a lap or two ago. He's picked up a drive-through, I noticed.
Yes, he has, causing a collision with 337 on lap 1. So poor old race control is still stuck looking at some of the things from lap 1, such as there was so much going on. Another drive-through penalty for car 53, which is Simone De Luca. Yeah,
okay.
And I think that might be due to that contact we saw with David Perel. Perel's only got a warning for it.
Fair enough. Okay, thanks, Ben. Right, here are the leaders. Fire the gun out of turn 16, up across the line. This will complete 16 laps of the race, and at the end of the next one, we'll be about halfway through. So, Delatraz still leads Leo. The gaps just stretch out ever so slightly in a straight line. Rouget pulls up to have a go at Marcucci. Remember, he was ahead oh so briefly a good few minutes ago, but he can't find a way back ahead of him now. So Marcucci is third, and look, right back onto the tail of the Porsches. The Audi's good through the corners, the Porsche's good in a straight line.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the two Audis are mounting yet another attack. Both Audis, Marcucci and Rouget, building up speed. So they're right on the tail of this car we're riding on right now, Federico Leo, in the Porsche. If he blinks, if he makes one little move to try and defend, he will have another Audi looking to go the other way around. So not a great position, because he wants to attack Delatraz, but he can't take a chance and do something which might be created. Look at the gap between first and second. Suddenly that's opened up by maybe just about a second, as Leo is focusing now more on what's happening behind him than maybe trying to get his position back to challenge for the lead.
So Delatraz really for the first time in the race, now that we're at almost the halfway point, finally has a bit of a gap, as for second and third they're going to be side by side. Marcucci to the inside line, he's gone through. Does he go wide? Yes, Leo comes back at him. Rouget has a go as well, can't find a way by. One up, one back then for Lorenzo Marcucci. Briefly second, but he's back down to third. It was going to happen, John, wasn't it, with all that speed carried into the corner?
Yeah, I mean, you could see the way the two Audis working in tandem were building back of the second place Porsche. In the meantime, so where's the lead? Oh, there's the lead. Porsche has pulled out at 1 point, or just at 1 second advantage. All of a sudden, it's much more comfortable for Delatraz in the lead than it is for Leo in second place. Because not only has he got Marcucci, he's going to have to deal with Rouget if Marcucci gets through.
So over the line they come, defence again for second and third. Marcucci to the outside of Leo, can't find a way by there, but Delatraz thinks fantastic, because now he is disappearing up the road. The gap, 1.8 seconds last time around. And look at Rouget now, all over Marcucci like a cheap suit. You've got Ivan Pereiras catching up as well, and Dan Wells is almost with them. So suddenly, all the gaps have shrunk, apart from the lead one that's opened out. Delatraz has checked out now, he's away and gone. But Leo busy trying to defend that second place. Pereiras is trying to defend for fifth. Right, we'll keep another eye on that. As Ben, penalty update, please. What's Alex Buncombe done wrong?
I think we may have seen this. Buncombe on Hildebrand and race direction seeing that perhaps he had an ABC, so advantage by contact. And so he's been given a 5-second time penalty. If you cast your eyes to the left-hand side, to the timing screen, that is signified by plus 5 seconds. So he doesn't have to do a drive-through penalty. He'll just have time added to his finishing lap. And that's where you will see all the time penalties, whether they be manual given by race direction and Richard Norbury, or whether they are from in-game with cutting the track, or indeed, as we saw at the start, lots of time penalties for effectively jumping the start, but obviously race control felt that was unnecessary.
Okay, and a replay here of the dramas between Leo and Marcucci heading down towards turn one at the start of the lap. That was Marcucci trying to go around the outside, couldn't do it. Rouget very nearly made a move against him. So right now, Delatraz it is who has the advantage, and it's this increased advantage of 2.4 seconds as he comes over the line. But Leo and then behind him, look, you can see him, Marcucci together. Rouget, John, has dropped away again.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that this sudden gain in track position and sudden loss in track position happens, literally in the space of a corner or half a lap. It's difficult maybe to fully understand, whereas in real racing that would be less likely. But one thing is for sure, Federico Leo is not going to be able to relax, because he's got the Audi, and whatever Leo does, it's being covered by Marcucci. We saw him down into turn 10 trying to make that move difficult because the Porsche was very strong in its defense. The Audi took the chance. You have to sometimes force these issues. The main thing, if you're going to make that type of move, just make sure you don't have any physical contact, because that will then destroy the remaining part of this race.
Well, Delatraz escaping, Leo regrouping, shaking off Marcucci for the moment. Rougier 4th, Pereiras 5th, Dan Wells some way back actually in 6th place, so it was a back marker getting into the previous shots, and therefore slightly confusing the situation. But Dan Wells still good for the top 6 if he can hang on in there, which would equal what he achieved at Spa. Federico Leo, though, not a bad debut at all. This is an experienced GT racer. Marcucci, though, trying to bring down that gap once more. You almost get the feeling now that Rougier could be in jeopardy for that 4th place from Pereiras before the end.
Yes, looks like it. That again, Pereiras all of a sudden, just a lap and a bit ago, came forward. There was a Bentley involved. It wasn't Dan Wells in the Lamborghini. It was one of the Bentleys, but nevertheless, Dan Wells is in 6th place, waiting to see the gap between himself and 5th place Pereiras. But really, it's an Audi 2, 3, then 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you got Wells in 6th place. Sorry, 3, 4, 5. Then you got the Lamborghini in 6th place.
Ben Barnicoat 13th. He's in the middle of these 3 cars. Chris Froggatt ahead, Andy Soucek behind him, and Ben Barnicoat with 26 minutes to go, still outside the points. He should be able to pick up a place here against the Ferrari. He looks to the inside line. The championship leader goes through, gets a tap in the tail from Froggatt. That unsettles the McLaren that gets all sideways. So Soucek gains 2 places in all of that. Ben Barnicoat, therefore, is still in 13th place, except now he's staring at the back of Soucek's Bentley.
And I mean, Ben Barnicoat, the pass was a gift to him by Froggatt, but then all of a sudden the Ferrari hits the back of the McLaren, which sets the McLaren sideways. That allows then Soucek, who's just watching all this, a free gift, gets ahead of the McLaren. He would have found it a lot more difficult to make that pass under normal racing circumstances.
Well, Soucek, the great opportunist, up into 12th place. Ben Barnicoat not only still 13th, but also he's dropped a long way back as he had to sort out that big slide. This is not looking good for championship points for Ben Barnicoat, is it? Sad to say.
But Buncombe has got a plus 5 second time penalty.
Yes.
So that will certainly bring Ben Barnicoat and Soucek ahead of Buncombe. In effect, they'll go from 12th and 13th to 11th and 12th as it stands.
Yeah, indeed. See how those gaps pan out. Also, see what happens in the top 10, because if a few tangle, that would help Barnicoat as well to get up the order. But right now, Delatraz looks as though he is going to go to the final round as a pretty comfortable championship leader. And, OK, the car will carry extra weight. That might, depending on which circuit is chosen, prove to be a problem. But right now, he is doing exactly what is required of him, and it's looking as though it could be a Porsche win. As we go on board with Matt Samuel, that is Nicholas Nielsen. Sorry, that is Maxim Yefanov, I should say, ahead. We just had that place change, so Yefanov goes ahead of Matt Samuel. There's Barnicoat going by, not really catching Soucek for the moment.
No, he's going to take a lap to regroup, but Soucek has got he's got where he wants to be, and he may just be able to carry a more natural pace than we're seeing from the McLaren. So Bentley carrying a 10 kilogram penalty, McLaren carrying a 25 kilogram penalty. Maybe that penalty will become more of an issue as we get deeper into the race. 23 minutes remaining, still really warm here in Barcelona. Track will change, and it will penalise those that have been a little bit aggressive on their tyre usage in the early phases.
So downhill goes that battle pack for 12th, 13th places. This is the replay. Look, Barnicoat through on the inside, and then got this big whack in the back by Froggatt.
Very strange. I think it's going to be a function of the sim, because it seemed as if the Ferrari accelerated very rapidly, hits the back of the McLaren, which of course then was a free pass for Andy Soucek, get past both of those cars. So Soucek up into 12th place, and he's 3 seconds behind then on the road his teammate Alex Buncombe in 11th.
Let's just get a thought from Ben C about that. Having just looked at that incident, Ben, did that look like something that was technology driven to cause that contact rather than driving induced?
It was some slight issue. It seemed weird how the Ferrari suddenly caught the back of Barnicoat. So it could be that Froggatt's slightly struggling with his connection, and therefore the game is predicting where he would be rather than actually exactly where he is. As we're going to ride on board a full lap here with Delatraz. An interesting piece of information: Federico Leo is not going to count towards points or BOP because he's a wild card for this race rather than a full entry. So that's a little bit less pain for Louis Delatraz going into the final round.
And therefore, everybody moves up one, do they, for points? So Marcucci would take second place points.
Presumably.
Yes, which still doesn't really help Ben Barnicoat because it doesn't get him into the points, but it gives Marcucci even more points, doesn't it, therefore, which is bad news for Ben. So, interesting stuff. Thank you, Ben. Right, this is Delatraz, John. We're on board.
Yeah, I mean, just doing the job we've seen him do in previous races when we've been on board. Just the way his inputs, steering in particular, everything is very precise. There's no sort of swift or rapid hand movements, no understeer, oversteer, catch it if you can. And, I mean, he's been under pressure very much this entire race, yet he's never really put a wheel wrong. He's been challenged on a couple of occasions, but he's resisted those challenges, made the key mistake of an unforced error.
So Delatraz over the timing line.
Just interested, looking at his on-board lap time for that last lap, 1:45 point something. Contrast that with his pole lap for this race at 1:43.1. So he's running approximately 2 and a bit seconds a lap slower than he did when he was in the car in ideal qualifying conditions.
The gap is coming down, isn't it? We had it at over 2.3 at one stage, but now it is back down to 1.7. So that means that Leo is getting a wriggle on.
He's getting a bit of pressure from Marcucci. Every reason to try and run down the gap to Delatraz. Delatraz all of a sudden found that over 2 second advantage, which would have given him that opportunity just fractionally, just to control everything, not to be so aggressive on the brakes. It's not a big brake circuit in the sense that others that we might visit are, but it's a tire killer, and it's a circuit that has this massive variation between warm, cool and hot, or cool, warm, or whatever way around it is.
So Delatraz with the lead shrinking, and there, look, Leo's got Marcucci bearing down on him once again. So the Swiss driver holds sway at the front of the pack. David Perel 7th, inching up onto the back of Dan Wells, who, as you'll notice from that graphic, has a rather prominent yellow band just ahead of the Lamborghini logo, which means that the internet connection is not good, and that is one of the reasons perhaps that Dan is struggling, but he's also in danger of losing a place on the road anyway to David Perel before the end. Now, having said that the gap was coming down first to second, it's just grown again at the last sector point, so Delatraz goes through, and 1.9 he has in hand now over Leo. Looks as though, John, Delatraz is controlling this now. Yes,
I think pretty clearly we're seeing Louis Delatraz, he has got that little bit of extra time if he needs to reach into it and pull that 2 second gap. That 2 second gap would be, I think, what he would like to try to achieve. It's 1.9 at the minute. He wants to get to the 2 second as a psychological blow to those that are following, to know that at any point when the challenge comes from second or third place, that there's a little bit left in the tank for Louis Delatraz to access, and just again, that 2 seconds, 2.1 seconds we'd like to have, makes you feel if you're running in second and third place, this guy is not going to be beaten today.
Well, what about Leo for second place? Yes, go on, Ben.
I think we may see a pass for 6th position soon. Last time by, Dan Wells was a second slower than David Perel. Perel is right on the tail of him now, and he has been just doing lap after lap, closing that gap from, I think, 4.5 seconds down to what is less than a second now. So expect to see a change. And Dan Wells, as you say, struggling not only with the pace of his car, but also with internet connection.
And so there, Federico Leo running second on the road, but Marcucci set for second place points because of this wild card status from the Italian in the Porsche, Federico Leo. So it's good for Marcucci, even if he can't find a way by, and he doesn't really have to now unless he wants to go after Delatraz, but he can still bank the points. Now there is Perel, and is he on the back of Dan Wells for 6th spot? Very definitely. Remember we said earlier about Ferraris coming good late race? Well, here is David Perel really hustling on now, John.
Yes, through 14, 15, then the final turn onto pit straight through 16. So has David Perel got that good exit speed you need to get quicker onto the straight than the Lamborghini you're following? But whatever aero you can pick up, the cars in a straight line are so closely matched, and even the aero benefit is so small. So David Perel closes down marginally under Kloss, and out into turn 3, then the gap should begin to extend again. But David Perel he's just about happy thinking about going down the inside into turn 4. Here's his opportunity. He's going to go down, take a late cut down the inside as we go back to the battle going on right now for 2nd place.
So again, the Audi breathing down the neck of the Porsche. Federico Leo is under attack. Marcucci chipping away lap after lap. He's stared at the back. He's been ahead for a fraction of a second. Can he make the move once again and score a real 2nd place? Let's see.
I think the thing that Marcucci needs to do to get past, and he's going to have a go down the outside once again, but now maybe the undercut might work for him. Yes, it has. So Marcucci sold the bluff, did a great job on Leo. He's got into 2nd place. The key to getting to 2nd place is not just finishing in 2nd place. Now he's got an opportunity. The gap between 1st and 2nd is now 2.7 seconds, 16 minutes remaining. The pace that Marcucci has shown all the way through this race, enabling his Audi to keep in contact with the 2 lead Porsches. How quickly can Marcucci get ahead of Leo and run that gap between 1st and 2nd place? He wants to win this race to get the maximum points. As you pointed out, Leo wasn't going to score points. The key to the overtake wasn't just getting 2nd on the road, it was giving him the opportunity to have a pop at race leader Louis Delatraz with just 15 minutes to go.
So Marcucci then now up and past. Is he going to pull away? Let's see. And what can he do about Delatraz, who has been able to establish this gap? The gap between the pair of them then is 3 seconds with 15 minutes to go. We've got David Perel up into the top 6 now as well, which will be really 5th in terms of points. Where is Ben Barnicoat? Still 13th, 12th for points. Doesn't help him one bit. You only get points for the top 10. So big disappointment. Ben Barnicoat's race has turned out to be after dramas on that 1st lap.
Yeah, and it was always going to be difficult in that 6th row of the grid. You're in the heart of where any trouble that's going to arise is going to arise. And Ben Barnicoat, through no fault of his own, got tagged in turn 1 into turn 2. And that, in effect, has destroyed any opportunity he has to consolidate his championship lead.
Now, Ben, what's the data in the game saying about Marcucci's pace now? Does he have a chance of bringing down the gap to Delatraz, or is Delatraz comfortable up front, as we just quickly see Ivan Pereiras here, but the Bentley behind, ignore that one for the moment, because that is a lap down, is it not?
Yeah, it's been hovering around that group of lead cars for quite some time, so it's out of position, but just running at the pace of those that he's following.
Indeed.
Everybody seems to be around a second a lap slower than they were, especially Leo Rougier Pereiras, 1.2 seconds slower than they were able to do at the start of the race. 15 minutes remaining, track temperature now 35 degrees, so it continues to come down. Obviously, tyre wear a huge factor now. Delatraz has decided to put a bit of a push on. He's at the moment he's up on his lap time amazingly on this particular lap, but they matched each other the last time through, Delatraz and Marcucci, so it's going to be a struggle, I think, to close down that gap with only 15 minutes remaining.
And what about Ben Barnicoat's pace? Ben, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about picking up damage within the game, he's just not being able to make progress, is he? Really frustrating.
Last lap nearly at 48, so potentially the damage that he did pick up, if it was front end, for instance, he would be using the tyres even more to try and run a decent pace. And so he could drop off the cliff a lot earlier than anybody else would if he runs out of tyre. I don't think for a second he's got the ability, unless things happen in front of him, to pick up points today. And he did so well at the start just to try and stay out of trouble, but just got tagged into the wall at the very end of that first lap incident.
Well, there's another penalised driver, Alex Buncombe. Now he's dropped back into 11th place anyway. I just wonder whether that's a ploy to get him closer to Andy Soucek, so when you put the penalty on and reverse the places, Andy gains a spot. Doesn't get him into the points, mind you. Arthur Rougier going through, he runs 4th. Interesting race from Arthur Rougier, because he was on occasions part of that leading battle, but he's dropped away just a little bit now, and certainly Leo is falling back from Marcucci. Now that he's lost the place, John, that gap has really opened up second to third.
Yes, I mean, in the case of Rougier we're looking at right now, while he is 4th on the road, as you point out, because Leo is a wild card. So I would suspect Rougier has decided to do, I'm 4th on the road, but I'm actually going to be 3rd overall. So it's very unlikely I'm going to be able to do an awful lot in the 12 minutes of this race remaining. So I'm just going to sit there, finish 4th on the road, but be classified as being 3rd overall and take those points. And that, in a sense, is the smart thing for Rougier to do at this phase of the race.
Now Marcucci currently the fastest man on the track, so as he hustles on, the gap is 2.8 seconds, but 12 minutes counting still to go. I don't think he's going to get to Delatraz in time, even if he does bring that gap down. Delatraz, as John said early on, driving with his head, very cannily, being able to drive as quickly or as slowly as situations dictate here. So he might be backing off a little, knowing that he can up his pace if he needs to.
Well, the thing is, if Marcucci does catch to the tail of Delatraz, that's one part of the equation. Difficult part will be, well, how will I find a way past in the climb? Just under 11 and a half minutes to this race remaining. As we go back, and there's Danny Kloss. We saw him at 22nd. So just making his way through this turn 14, 15 seconds. And then the flat out, even with a tyre that is probably well beyond its best, turn 16.
So over the timing line goes the wildcard driver in the Bentley in the K-Pax Racing by SRO Esports entered car. We're almost into the final 10 minutes as he dives down towards turn 1, the road to himself. Meantime here, you can see you've got the Ferrari of Nicholas Hillebrand just ahead of Alex Buncombe, and Andy Soucek is almost with them.
And this has been a battle that's been going on pretty much since this event got underway between the Ferrari and the Bentley, and they've swapped positions on a number of occasions. In fact, Alex Buncombe, the penalty that he's carrying was because of the contact that occurred with Hildebrand, if I remember back to the early phase.
That's right. Ahead of them all, we've got Ezequiel Perez-Companc in 8th place, having another good strong run, and David Fuminelli in 9th. Ben, yeah.
A little bit of a confusing maths around that 10th position now, because obviously Federico Leo in 3rd doesn't score points, so everybody moves up. So Hildebrand effectively is 9th for the points, and Buncombe would be 10th for the points if he didn't have the 5-second penalty, which drops him behind Soucek, but no longer behind Barnicoat. So Soucek is at the moment the last point scorer.
Indeed so, and I was wondering, as I said a lap ago, whether that was Alex backing off, so he dropped to within that 5 seconds to make sure that Andy got the place. So the Bentley's thinking about how best to try and maximise opportunities, even though they're a long way back within the race. Al Khalifa goes through. Jody Fannin, another quick Brit with a big Falcon Horse BMW. They're going through into 21st place. Jody, somebody else that's doing multiple sim championships, GT cars and single-seaters, comes over the timing line now, down towards turn 1, and we are indeed into that last 10 minutes of the race. What about Marcucci versus Delatraz? The gap last time 2.9 seconds, so still the Porsche driver looking as though he's got it all under control. Issa Al Khalifa here in 20th spot in the McLaren.
Yes, comes through turn 2, slides out towards the exit curb, gets it back for turn 3, runs wide on the exit. There basically is no penalty because everybody runs wide on the exit of turn 3. It seems as if the demarcation line is of no relevance whatsoever, but you know he's got his hands full right now because Jody Fannin in the BMW, potentially quicker of these two cars. It's the usual story in Barcelona, you can catch, but where can you make your way through?
Nose to tail they run. Meantime, Delatraz at the next sector stretching the gap yet further, but the BMW now all over the tail of the McLaren here.
So down the hill they come, into turn 10. McLaren moves to the right and opens the door, I mean, very generously in my opinion, for Fannin in the BMW, as if, well, I don't really want that pressure right now, so I'm going to give that position up, and that's the position for 20th that's been given up by Al Khalifa to Jody Fannin in the BMW. Soft overtake, I was told.
So Fannin through and should now escape up the road, shouldn't he, as they drop down towards the chicane. We have got just under 8 minutes of the race left. And Marcucci still hustling on, but everything he tries, Delatraz has an answer to. Onto the pit straight then now comes Isa Al Khalifa, the 2Cs Motorsports McLaren. Over the line he goes, and now down towards the first right-hander, down to turn 1. Meantime, Hillebrand, Buncombe, Soucek, they're all still running together, but are we about to get the Bentley switch here?
I suspect you're going to see Andy Soucek getting again what I would describe as a soft overtake coming down the hill. So will it happen here or not? All of a sudden, a rather late closing of the door there. Alex, your teammate, thought he was going to go through and take that position, get the points.
Don't tangle, because that would throw a lifeline to Ben Barnicoat, wouldn't it, who's behind them. So the Bentleys, 11th and 12th on the road, but a penalty for the first of those two Bentleys, a 5-second time penalty applied. So down they come to turn 16, onto the start straight once more. Nicholas Hillebrand doing a pretty decent job, isn't he, in that 10th place in the Ferrari. The best that we've had out of him thus far has been a 24th, so much his best showing of the season.
And look at Andy Soucek, 3 cars yet again lining up to the tail of Alex Buncombe. Closes down into turn 1, holds ground into turn 2, then the gap will open up fractionally as they accelerate up through this long. And again, depending on how much tyre you've got left, not quite flat on the exit to be, but you just run out of grip. You run out too far on the exit of the corner.
Ben Barnicoat behind them in the classification, but nowhere near them on the road. So it's a big gap that has opened up. Chris Froggatt 14th, Nicholas Nielsen is in 15th place. Delatraz lead gap down slightly. He's down to 2.6 on this lap, but again, we know that the Porsche is good at certain sections and the Audi is good at others. So as you ride on board with Andy Soucek closing onto the back of Alex Buncombe, whose Bentley rides the curb, sparks fly from underneath. Now Soucek perhaps thinks about the inside. Well, he might think, but he ain't going to get through there.
No, turn 9 is a no-no overtaking. Again, if you're side by side, then you can make it. The Soucek goes one way, Buncombe goes the other way. Is this going to be the... Yes, it is. So Andy Soucek realised the message went out, clear and single, just stay. Oh, don't throw it away, Andy, for goodness sake. You were given an easy overtake and then you run so far wide in the exit of turn 10. It was almost embarrassing for Alex Buncombe not to retake you.
But now played the team game, didn't he, there, and allows one other Bentley driver to keep the place, keep the point that he's going to score. So up towards the line they go. Now we're into the last 5 minutes. Delatraz has already broken the beam and he's 2.5 seconds to the good over Marcucci. Federico Leo running third, but again to make this point as a wild card, points he will not score. So everybody behind him moves up one spot as far as the points are concerned. So Arthur Rougier is going to be the driver that takes third place points, running fourth on the road as Soucek comes out of turn 2. And Alex Buncombe falling away a little bit behind now.
Yes, I mean, he's no purpose in if we see, this is another Bentley, is that Monty in the second of the two Bentleys? And 24 is... Danny Kloss, yeah.
So let's see here as the two of them accelerate through. It is Romain Monti. He is on the lead lap. Danny Kloss is the lap down, and Monti goes through on the inside line. So laps the, if you like, local hero, the Spanish driver, ex-single-seater racer. Did do a little bit of ELMS last year as well, but as Ben said earlier, we've not really seen a great deal of him in full-time competition for a long while. Romain Monti goes by, picks up the place. Romain with a fourth as his best finish of the season. But drama there. One of those is Alessio Romagnoli, AC Milan star, the captain.
Up at turn 9. Now that we're talking about overtakes in turn 9, that's what can happen. So contact with the Lamborghini. So that was an unfortunate incident. Could have been a lot worse. That's the quickest corner in the circuit, and lucky to get away with that, not putting one of the two cars solidly into the bank.
Almost an own goal from Romagnoli in that, but he survived it. Nicholas Hillebrand, in the meantime, is still under attack. Some very crude maths would suggest that Delatraz will take over the championship lead and be 10 points ahead of Marcucci, who'll be another 6 ahead of Barnicoat after this race, if things stay as they are. So Delatraz provisionally with a 10-point cushion over Marcucci with one race still to go.
And Souček all over the back of Hildebrand and the Ferrari, so having had one Bentley chase him and become a punch bag at different times, now he's got the sister car of Souček, who is probably going to look a little bit more threatening with 2.5 minutes to go.
Right, well, Souček now is on a mission, isn't he? So Andy, who is 9th, had that good run last time out at Spa, now trying to, at the Nürburgring, trying to inch up onto the back of Hillebrand, who in turn is going after Fumanelli. But Souček, as he well knows, needs to get on with this. He's running out of time, running out of laps.
Yeah, and this is the part of the racetrack where it really is about being patient and being sensible. So you come out of turn 7, up through 8, up the hill, the climb up the hill into turn 9. We saw what happened if you try and make a pass here just a lap or so ago. It's about a good exit onto turn 9, the run down the hill, and he's thinking about it, but he's too far behind to try and do anything about it. So he's going to come across the line and in effect go on to what will be the final lap of this race.
Yes, there is less than a lap time left in the race now. So Delatraz still leads the way. Souček crawling all over the back of Hillebrand, determined to try to stay in the top 10 if he can. Down the hill they drop, heading towards the chicane. Look, they're closing on Fumanelli, aren't they, as they come out of turn 15 now then. But Delatraz looking so strong up front. He's on to lap 34, leading by 2 seconds. The gap is coming down between the leaders, but not enough to suggest that Marcucci is going to be able to find a way by.
No, I mean, it's been a masterful drive by Louis Delatraz since the lights went out. He is not put a wheel or a foot wrong, and he's been able to control his pace and therefore the pace of those that were following him. And when he had the opportunity to make the break, he made it. And he's been in control literally from the minute those lights went out.
So look back from Hillebrand's Ferrari. There you can see Andy Souček, 10th and 11th, accelerating their way then around the midpoint of the lap. Yep.
Just to give you an idea of what Hillebrand's seeing in the cockpit, he'll have a radar that shows exactly where Souček, who will be in red because he's less than a second behind, and Hillebrand, who will be changing from orange to red because he's around a second in front, and that radar shows exactly where both cars are. So if there is an overlap, he'll have an audible warning from his NASCAR style spotter, but he'll also be able to see exactly where that car is. So no excuses for turning in on somebody if he gets alongside, and this is the place to do it.
There's so much more to this than those non-sim specialists like John and I first believe. So down they come. Thanks for that, Ben. It's, again, intriguing to know all the ins and outs of this, all the different nuances of sim racing. Souček, meantime, is throwing everything at this. The clock has just hit 0, which means that round 4 of the championship has hit the 1 hour mark. It means that when he comes across the line, Louis Delatraz will be on target to score a race victory, take the checkered flag. He's going to do that now, in fact. So Delatraz set for the race win from Lorenzo Marcucci and Federico Leo for 3rd place, as here is the fight between Hillebrand and Souček. The Ferrari is going to stay ahead as they come then up towards the timing line. Through they go, and Hillebrand it is that takes 10th on the road, and he's Souček 11th, but they'll move it up 1 place on the point because of the
one more lap
wild card. As he squeezed through ahead of the clock. Okay, so Delatraz gets 1 more lap out of it then, a 2.5 clear. And Marcucci has brought it down, Ben, hasn't he? But not enough.
It certainly has brought it down. I mean, at the final lap, I wouldn't imagine that Delatraz needs to be that generous in allowing Marcucci to close down. But the 1.5 second gap will give Marcucci, well, is there a problem with the Porsche? Have I got something I can still manage to do to take victory? Or is it just Delatraz being uber cautious and just thinking, maybe actually Delatraz might have thought that he had taken the checkered flag because the countdowns that he might have on his sim might have indicated, so I think he went across the line with probably a few seconds of the race remaining, so he's got 1 more racing lap to complete.
So why is this gap coming down, man?
Delatraz was at turn 3 when the clock went to 0, but he's caught 2 cars in traffic, and now he's at the final turn, so we are going to get the checkered flag in a few moments.
Okay, so looking at what's going on for 10th on the road, Louis Delatraz is about to come across the timing line then to win round 4 of the championship. There's the checkered flag on the graphic. So 35 laps done, and the margin just 9/10 of a second. So Delatraz wins from Marcucci in second place. Third, Federico Leo. Artur Rougier takes fourth, and Ivan Pereiras fifth, with David Perel in sixth place. There is Pereiras taking the checkered flag. Seventh goes the way of Dan Wells ahead of Ezequiel Perez Compact. David Fumanelli should be ninth, here he is, and 10th should go the way of Nicholas Hillebrand, actually shaking off Andy Soucek on that last lap. But Louis Delatraz did everything absolutely right in that, didn't he? He was able to defend in the first, 2/3, control the gap, and was able to maintain the advantage all the way through. And Ben Barnicoat, championship leader coming into the race, doesn't score. He goes ahead of Alex Buncombe, who is limping towards the line. So Ben takes 12, make that 11th because of the lack of points for Leo as a wild card, but it still doesn't get him into the top 10. Still frustration for Ben Barnicoat after his dramas at the start of the race. And Alex Buncombe limps over the line, losing it out to Matt Samuel.
He may have run out of fuel.
Simple as that. Simple as that.
I think so. He's just taken the checker flag, and obviously you have to fuel your car for a race distance in sim racing, something that Gianni Morbidelli didn't know the last few in a race that I did recently. But Buncombe has done it.
Ben, when you say run out of fuel, you're talking about fuel as I would know it, in other words, petrol or diesel, or you're talking about e-power?
No, you just have to choose how many laps of fuel.
Got you there.
I'm not getting into electric cars, no way.
So Louis Delatraz takes the race win from Lorenzo Marcucci. Third, wildcard Federico Leo with Artur Rougier. Fourth, fifth goes the way of Ivan Pereiras and David Perel. Sixth, ahead of Dan Wells, Ezequiel Perez Compact. Eighth, David Fumanelli. Ninth and 10th, Nicholas Hillebrand. But Andy Soucek is promoted into the points, and therefore the first one that misses out after a long hour for no reward. The man that led the championship coming into this race, Ben Barnicoat. Chris Froggatt, 13th. A good showing for Chris after a pretty torrid start to the season. That's his best result thus far, ahead of Nicholas Nielsen and Maxim Yefanov. Matt Samuel, 16th, ahead of Alex Buncombe, limping to the line. Simone De Luca, penalties and an off. He takes 18th ahead of Scott Mulvin, who also had an off early in the race, and Jody Fannin rounds out the top 20. Jack, compared to the previous rounds, it wasn't the most frenetic, but what we did have was almost a masterclass, really, in how to do it from Louis Delatraz. He knew exactly at the start how to defend, where to position the car, and then how to maintain whatever size gap he needed to maintain.
Yeah, it was really a controlled race, wasn't it? Very impressive stuff from Louis Delatraz. That means that in the 4 rounds so far, he's scored points in all of them, which is mightily impressive, and that's what pushes him up to the top of the championship. 59 points, 10 points clear now of Marcucci in second position. Then Ben Barnicoat, 43 points in third spot, and Ivan Pereiras picking up another couple of points today with his 4th place finish. Well, it was 5th on the road, but points for 4th, and he slots in there in 4th place on 36. So an entertaining race, that one. And John, I suppose we discussed at the start keeping your nose clean, and Ben Barnicoat and Jordan Pepper, 2 title protagonists, were both wiped out of that very first corner. Well, that's what he thinks about it. Maybe he's dashed off for a mid race pit stop there. But yeah,
dash. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a thought we want to dwell on too long, is it?
Sorry.
But Ben, your thoughts on that question I just posed? I mean, that's what happens when you're in the middle of the pack in sim racing. But it's been a long time since I've seen a car on the grass on the inside just sort of wiping everyone out like a bowling ball at the start.
Well, as you would if you didn't have a screen and you didn't have the visibility to be able to see where you were going. As John suggested, braking laps would have been a good idea. He certainly would have felt that he was on the grass through the force feedback, even if he wouldn't have been able to see anything. But even, I suppose, if you slam on your brakes at that point, it probably is too late.
Yeah, absolutely. So that means that Delatraz is at the top of the standings, as I say. And what do we make of Delatraz, David? It's been a pretty impressive season for him. You have to say he's not always been right at the front, but he's been in the mix in kind of the same way that David Tonitzer has been in the silver class.
Yeah, I mean, there are different ways to win championships, aren't there? By winning race after race or banking the points. But what he has done is keep out of trouble, score well, and add it all together. And for my money, that was a very impressive drive. It was what the Nürburgring should have been. He, as you see the replay of all the dramas at turn one, that was why Michael Grenier got the penalty for causing that collision. But for Delatraz's point of view, that's what Nürburgring looked like it was going to be. Defend, defend, defend. Okay, there he was outfoxed towards the end by Barnicoat. Here, it was all very well controlled, and no matter what anybody threw at him in the early stages, he was able to defend and withstand all of that pressure and not make a mistake. Yeah, he's a driver, I think, the evidence is there. He's developed nicely as the championship has gone on, and so now he's very much a force to be reckoned with in the sim world as much as in real world racing, and especially given that, of course, this is somebody that comes from single seaters largely in the real world, not GT cars. But yeah, he's been increasingly impressive.
Well, let's speak now to Lorenzo Marcucci, the man who finished second in that race and is now second in the championship as well. Lorenzo, congratulations on that race. How important was it for you when you were fighting with Federico Leo, because he doesn't score points for the championship? So was that stressful?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, it was a very good battle. It was a very good fight, but I lost a few seconds to Delatraz, and then it was impossible for me to catch him at the end of the race. By the way, it's great racing, and I think this is what people want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're second in the championship now, 10 points behind Delatraz. What do you think going into the last round? You're the guy who's got to stop him, but he's been very consistent this year.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident because Porsche now has a lot of weight for the last race due to the BOP. So I think we are in a good position to score good points and to maybe try to win the lap.
Okay, great. Good luck. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
So there's Lorenzo Marcucci then, second in the race, second in the championship. He is going to be the title rival to Louis Delatraz coming into the final race weekend. We're just seeing the replay there of the chaos down at the first corner, and that is what wiped out the likes of Jordan Pepper and Ben Barnicoat, two of the championship protagonists. We're now going to turn our attention, I don't think we've got anyone else to speak to, no we haven't, so I'm going to turn our attention to the silver class that we've got coming up next, because at the moment it is David Tonizza who is leading the championship on 31 points. He is 4 points ahead of Patrick Selva and Jesus Sicilia, and then he is 6 points ahead of Andrea Capoccia in 4th position. So those are the 4 that are in contention for the title. And on the grid, it is second place man Patrick Selva that has secured pole position. Arthur Camara is in second, Kamil Franchek is third, and Andrea Capoccia, who's 4th in the championship, is 4th on the grid. Now, David Tonizza has only qualified in 8th place. He is the championship leader for Ferrari, but we haven't really seen him qualify at the front throughout the year. He's been another, like Delatraz, who's been a consistent point scorer. The big surprise, I suppose, is that Jesus Sicilia, who won the last race at the Nürburgring, could only qualify 28th on the grid for this one. So this could knock him out of the real title fight. Ben Constanduras, your thoughts on that qualifying session and Sicilia in particular, I suppose?
Yeah, obviously the Aston is struggling with the ballast that it was given by that success last time out, and the McLaren now presumably clear of ballast, so they can run very well. We saw McLaren's incredibly good at Silverstone, if you remember, when they were ballast clear, so expect to see that again here.
Yeah, indeed. We're seeing a look at the starting list there on the screen. Jack Keithley, who had such a good race last time out, down in 24th position. Bit of a surprise to see Henny Al-Sabti that far off the pace in the Lexus. He's been running towards the front of the order at various times throughout the season. And there is Jesus Sicilia there, starting in 28th place in the AAA esports team, which is Olivier Panis's team. And then we've got David Greco starting at the back in what is going to be a very big grid on the charge down towards turn 1. As I said, David Tonizza qualifying in 8th place, which you'd think is a bit disappointing for the championship leader, but that's kind of where he's been all year.
Yeah, when he has been up near the front, like at the Nürburgring, he didn't make the best out of it. So keep out of trouble at turn 1. We've said it at so many venues thus far, and we say it in so many races, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, if he can finish well and bank points, That is going to be crucial, especially given that he's got Selva way ahead of him on the grid. Patrick Selva on the front row. He is going to be a threat. You've also got Capoccia on the second row of the grid. Arthur Camara on row one. Again, like we saw in the pro race, you've got some really good drivers ahead of the championship leader. So there's a lot that can shake out of this. And another fascinating one is going to be Niels Neujoks, who's had a pretty torrid time in terms of results. We know he's quick. We know he's experienced. We know he can deliver. He's only 15th in the championship. Well, he's on the third row of the grid. So I'm just wondering whether this might turn out to be his day, because he's got the experience, he's got the savvy to know what to do from a decent grid position.
Well, we're about to get underway with round 4 of the SRO Esport GT Series from Barcelona. The final round will be in 3 weeks' time. The track is going to be voted for by you guys. We'll keep you up to date with how you can do that later on in the week. But the 21st of June is going to be the grand final, the final 1 hour races for the Pro class and the Silver class. Ben Barnicoat lost the championship lead, so it'll be Louis Delatraz who will arrive in the Pro class, leading the standings. 10 points ahead of Marcucci. Barnicoat down to third, Ivan Pereiras in fourth. Those are going to be the title protagonists in the Pro class. In the Silver class, David Tonitza leads at the moment on 31 points, but he's only 4 points ahead of Patrick Selva and Jesus Cecilia. And then it's only another 2 points back to Andrea Capoccia in fourth in the standings. And we're going to get a closer look at how that championship battle is going to unfold going into the final round in the next 1 hour, because the cars are on their formation lap in the Silver Cup class for round 4 of the SRO Esport GT Series. So let's throw it over to Ben Constanduras, John Watson, and once again, David Addison.
So, Jack, we're about to go racing. Patrick Selva is the man on pole position. As you rightly say, he's second in the championship, and he desperately wants a race win here to put himself into the lead of the championship and not be a silver medalist, I suppose. With him on the front of the grid, Arthur Camara, 5th equal in the championship. We know that these are 2 very quick drivers indeed. Kamil Franchik starting on the second row alongside, like Selva, a man that's had a win, Andrea Capoccia. Then you've got Enzo Bonito with his excellent CV in sim racing, lining up alongside another hugely experienced sim racer, Niels Neujoks. Yuri Petrochenko will go from 7th alongside David Tonitza. Then the championship leader needs to be on his toes to get up through the order. On the 5th row of the grid, Jan-Marcel Dietrich's Porsche and Luca Losio alongside him. But yes, the winner last time out, Jesus Cecilia, 28th on the grid. He has got a huge amount of work to do. Hani Al-Sabti is even further back than that, 36th. He's 5th equal in the championship. And Axel Petit, who is 9th equal in the championship, will start 35th. So some drivers that have had good days a long way back. Eamon Murphy, another quirk. He had a really good run, remember, at the Nürburgring, but he's only 19th on this grid. So a guy that put himself 5th equal with that one good result is going to have to work very hard over the next 1 hour. So it's not an easy track to overtake around, and we know that turns 1 and 2, the real pinch point on the first lap of the race. What is going to shake out for the Silver Series then? 3 races thus far, 3 different winners. Remember, in terms of ballast, Aston Martin's lug around 25 kilos, Porsche 17 and the Lexus 10. So those McLarens up at the pointy end of the grid, ballast free, and they're really good around here anyway because of their shape. It is round 4 of the Silver Series within the SRO Esport GT Series. We are about to go racing them. Patrick Selva versus Arthur Camara. Slightly more black colouring on the front of Selva's car to tell them apart as they head up towards the line. Kamil Franchik's Lamborghini alongside the Audi of Andrea Capoccia on row 2. Keep an eye to number 95 Ferrari of the championship leader, David Tonitza. We go racing. It's a good start by Camara from the outside of the front row, just getting the drop on Patrick Selva as they head down towards turn 1. Through the middle of the boat, though, comes the Lamborghini. Kamil Franchik on his toes, tries to prise open the door. He's got past Capoccia. It is going to be Camara that leads. Selva goes second, so he's been mugged off the line. Franchik is third, and everybody else is trying to be fourth at the moment with Capoccia just ahead. But, John, they've done better through turns 1 and 2 than the pros did.
Much better start from the sim drivers, and pretty much everybody stayed on track. I think one car got a little bit wide in the transition from 1 to 2. But certainly a strong start from Camara on the outside of the grid. He had that momentum more than Patrick Selva had for some strange reason. So he's got the lead. Will he do what we saw Delatraz do in the pro driver, albeit that Delatraz was on pole at turn 1? That was a good overtake by Arthur Camara to take away the benefit of being in pole position. And now, well, he's got, what is it, three tenths of a second up the hill into turn 9. before then they get round turn 9, dive down the hill, and this long line of cars follow my leader. And notice, not in the top 10 is there a front mid-engine car. Those are the cars that dominated in the wet weather at Nürburgring. That's why they won at Nürburgring. And that's why Jesus Cecilia starts 24th here this afternoon. The layout of the track is more favourable to the mid-engine, rear-engine cars.
Absolutely right. And David Tonitza also, Ben, has dropped back, hasn't he? So from being 8th on the grid, the championship leader has already got roughed up and he's lost 2 places. He's only 10th. He's barely in the points.
Absolutely a very difficult start for the Ferrari, and a lot of action just out of camera shot. Further back, we have a couple of cars facing the wrong direction. Not cars that have really featured in the top of the standings, the likes of Gregor Schill, Tarek Gamil, Luca Lossio was also facing the wrong way. Daniel Santoro, he's been strong actually, but he was facing the wrong direction. I think we may see some pit visitors at the end of this first lap. Jesus Cecilia has parked it on the before the end of the first lap, facing the wrong direction. No points for that Aston at all today, for sure.
Dear oh dear. So he was then 2nd equal in the championship. He will drop down. Arthur Camera, though, 5th equal, leads the way. And right now he's building the gap ever so slightly over Patrick Selva, who is there in 2nd place. 3rd is Kamil Franchek, having really his best showing of the championship thus far, running in 3rd place then as the cars drop downhill once again. And this is the view from Enzo Benito, John.
Yeah, coming up into turn 7, keep it neat and tidy. You can run the curb on the exit through 8, then up the hill. So this leading group of 7 or 8 cars, all covered, well, it was less than a second between each of the cars. Now there's bits of marker cones on the racetrack or bodywork. I don't know what that is. Everybody's staying well to the right of the racetrack as they come down in. Get your braking spots correct. And off the camera, I mean, maybe just settling down. He's got the lead. He doesn't have to worry very much at this phase about Patrick Selva, 7/10 of a second behind. So he can just go about his work, do what he saw, what we watched Delatraz do, contact further down through the field, and you can see crash, bang, wallop. That's coming out of turn 5 and into the curve of 6, not really a corner, it's more of a curve.
So up towards the pit straight comes this battle for 14, 15, 16th places there. The pink and white Porsche Eamon Murphy going by. Had that really good run at the Nürburgring and is in the body of the field here as they go down towards turn 1. But right now, off the camera, 7/10 of a second up on the charging Patrick Selva behind him. Kamil Franchek running in 3rd place.
So Eamon Murphy actually has done quite well. I mean, he started in 19th. He's now up into, well, it's just changing every minute. You look at it, he's in 16th place. So he's made up 3 places on the opening lap.
Noyux has made a great start up to 5th position from his starting spot. He suggested that he had traffic on every single one of his qualifying laps, so wasn't able to maximise his potential in qualifying. He is a very good hot lapper, and there are such things as hot lappers in sim racing and then people who actually are good at racing. And Nils is very, very fast, always in qualifying, but didn't show in this one, and perhaps that was a blessing because he's now calmly making his way up through the field, and McLaren's looking very strong, 4 in the top 6.
Absolutely right. Yes, Niels Nuyok's then up from 6th on the grid. You mentioned, Ben, also Luca Lossio was facing the wrong way, and I think Philippe Simard's Bentley was the cause of that because Simard is being given a drive-through penalty. So he's going to fall even further down through the order. But yes, the McLaren's looking oh so strong right now. You're on board with Giovanni De Salvo, though, in his Lamborghini. So the racing leaders over the timing line. Arthur Camera goes through 7/10 of a second up on Patrick Selva. For championship points here, though, Watty, Selva's got to get on with this and try and find a way through, hasn't he?
Well, he's going to have to think about it because they're in identical cars, other than the individual preferences in terms of setup. But, you know, they've got basically the car that's going to win the race. So the McLaren's dominated qualifying, blocking out the front row of the grid. But further behind, you've got Lamborghini, Audi, a Ferrari in 7th place, a Porsche in 8th place, another Audi in 9th, and another Ferrari in 10th. But it's Tonitza in 10th place. That's the one that really needs to get a bit of a wriggle on and get a bit of a, you know, consolidate his position in the championship.
So Noyok's busy then. He's got them all stacked up behind him there. He's trying to find a way past Capoccia. Now, what about David Tonitza here, Ben? He's trying to make amends, but for points, this is looking pretty grim at the moment. I know the Ferrari goes better late race, but he's got a lot of work to do, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And this will not be the same kind of situation that we saw in the pro race where we'll have large variances in lap time, lap by lap. These guys are so good. They've got thousands of laps under their belt, and they'll be so consistent that to find any kind of advantage for Tanitsa is going to be tricky. And then, as we know, Barcelona is not easy to overtake. Little opportunity opening up in front of him, that he needs that kind of thing to actually make up any progress here.
Yeah, because right now he's not doing it. Yes, John?
So just the issue that we saw in the pro race is even more amplified in the sim driver race. It is the nature of Barcelona. The grids in real racing are always exceptionally tight. It's no different here in a sim race. The consequence of it is you get a lot of cars running very close together. In the process of doing so, you inhibit your opportunities to pass because your pace is being dictated by the car ahead of you. You lose the thing I call momentum, and what you'll have is a long line of cars, as we're seeing as they come down this long straight in Barcelona, and nobody is in a position to make a serious threat at an overtake. Best place probably on the racetrack is going to be into turn 10, but it's easily defended. And if you make it wrong, if you make it overrun in turn 10, the undercut will occur. So the opportunities are few and far between.
So Tanitsa then on the tail here of Giorgio Simonini, trying to force a mistake out of the Audi driver and then pounce. So evenly matched, as John explains, these two as they turn left. Ahead of Simonini is Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Rover Racing coloured Porsche. Ahead of him is Enzo Benito, and the lead gap still hovering around the 0.7 of a second mark. Camera defending from Selva, not escaping up the road, but just look at this huge line of cars that really is third, fourth, fifth, and all the way back.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost, if you held this camera shot, you'd see the entire field coming in there. Well, the Mercedes just sticking its nose out to see whether there was an opportunity. And it was Sassani. Normally he's the one who's doing the defending. There he was, making an attacking move. It didn't come off, but indicating that he would like to move forward from his current 11th place onto Nizza.
So downhill comes Nils Neujoks. He's on the back of Capoccia, who is on the tail of Kamil Franchak, which means the two leading McLarens are escaping. Now look back from Capoccia's Audi. He's been a winner this year, don't forget, because it was Capoccia that scored the honours at Spa, making it a good day for Audi. Over the timing line he comes, and Neujoks close, but not close enough to make a move.
No, he's not really gaining anything at all. Under brakes there'll be a fractional gain, but then once you exit out of sequence of turns 1 into turn 2, then that will redress itself and go back to the gap as they came down into turn 1. I mean, it's so competitive. I mean, the sim racers really are absolutely at the edge of what is possible in a sim event. Look how close, I mean, further through the field, coming through turn 3. You'd think maybe, could they make a move down the inside into turn 4? Well, you haven't even got them. I mean, Ian Murphy didn't have to defend that position. De Silva tried to get, he's having a go now. He's managed to get the track position, but Murphy on the inside into turn 5, goes door handle to door handle with the Lamborghini. Has he come off the better of the two? Well, that massive torque from the flat 6 Porsche engine did the business.
Through he goes then. Eamon Murphy up one further place then. That puts him up in a 16th. It's interesting, Ben, isn't it, as well, just looking at Arthur Camera up the road in second place, because he won that charity event we had at Monza, the 2 heats and a final. He had a second place in the opening round of the championship and really struggled at Spa and at the Nürburgring. So now we're seeing Camera back to what we know he can do.
Well, I think that's a little bit to do with the performance and the BOP that was placed on the McLaren for Spa. There was no chance anybody in a McLaren was going to do anything. And then I'm not quite sure the McLaren suited the wet conditions that we saw at the Nürburgring. So this is back to back to Silverstone, but a very hot day at Silverstone. 35 degrees air temperature, 37 track. Same kind of conditions that we saw in the pro race here at 6:15 in the evening. So track temperatures will drop, but I think a lot will be taken out of the tyres in the early doors of this race.
with your timing that you have access to, just keep an eye, if you will, on Selva, because to the eye it looks like he's getting closer now to camera. And also third, fourth, fifth is starting to bunch up. Neujoks hustling along. He's getting onto the back of Capoccia, who makes a mistake there. Look, going out of turn 3. And that means now that Niels Neujoks is closing on the Audi, which in turn, John, is closing on the Lamborghini.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mirror of what we saw in the pro race. You're getting a little bit of an ebb and flow. You do also get a sort of spike in lap times. Hard to understand why. Maybe it's just a function of sim racing. So suddenly a gap has appeared, then it's disappeared, then it reappears. Because the drivers are making their way through. We're just, 12 minutes or so into the race. Tires are fresh. Drivers are making little errors. And at the same time as you make a little error, the competitor or the following car gets it right. So that's maybe where the gap variation is coming from.
But look at this line now for third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It stretches back. The two McLarens escaping up the road. Camera and Selva then, 1 and 2. Arthur Camera, the race leader, but the gap is little by little coming down.
Yeah, the gap between first and second and third. Well, the gap between first and third, I beg your pardon, is now best part of 2.5 seconds. And that means that McLaren have got, at this phase, total grip. There's no prospect of anybody. Capaccio in the Lamborghini, sorry, in the Audi in fourth place, maybe rather than Franchek in the Lamborghini, because it did appear in the pro race the Audis were almost as good, in fact on some occasions probably better. If Capaccio can clear the third place Lamborghini, maybe we'll see an Audi resurgence in the closing stages of the race.
Does look though now as though Capoccia is falling away, doesn't it, from Kamil Franchak? So that gap between third and fourth opens up, partly I suspect because Capoccia is a little bit busy trying to defend from Niels Neujoks. And can he find a way through? Well, you're riding with Neujoks now, but just backs up your point, John. It's so hard to find a way through here, especially if no one's making a mistake ahead of you.
Well, I mean, all you can hope for is that there is a mistake, or two cars maybe get a little bit too ambitious and try and make a move that never was really ever going to be on. So you have to keep an eye for that, not just follow the car blindly and assume that that's all that you have to do. You've got to look further down the road and see what's going on, particularly here on the run down into turn 1. A lot of defence going on, and look at Neujoks going one way, going the other way, looking for a way to get past Capoccia. So doesn't do it this lap, but wasn't in a position to challenge either. But now into turns 11 and 12, possibility of preparation. Can he maintain that gap coming through turn 16? But I mean, he's running up, he almost hit the back of the Audi into turn 12.
So through the chicane, the move for turn 1 starts here. You've got to get a good run out of the chicane, keep that momentum through turn 16, and then nail your foot to the boards over the timing line. The Audi just edges away ever so slightly, does it? Let's see, the McLaren then trying to stay in touch as they come over the line now. Down towards turn 1, Neujoks looks to the inside line, but look how late they break. It's a long straight. Capoccia closing slightly onto the back of the Lamborghini of Franchek that's there in third place, but Neujoks still not near enough to make a move.
No, I mean, it all comes back down to the choice. A little bit less wing, you gain on the straight, you run a bit more wing, you gain elsewhere. So is that going to be a move around the outside? No, it wasn't, but it was a very well. That's further through the field, I beg your pardon.
So big shuffle. That is Yuri Petrochenko in the other McLaren, getting up alongside Niels Neujoks. He was ahead, he drops back again. So 1 up and 1 down for Yuri Petrochenko. So Neujoks focusing on the Audi, briefly got mugged there, and Petrochenko having one of his better showings of the championship, running in the top 6 right now. But if Neujoks has got to start defending, that's really going to hurt him in his quest to move forward, of course.
Well, suddenly all of it beat right on his gearbox.
So
dropping
Neujoks
downhill down into turn 10. So one might say Neujoks has got it back in control because he's right on the gearbox, the rear wing of that Audi. But the McLaren following, Petrochenko following Neujoks, identical cars, identical performances. Just got to be on your toes, keep an eye on your mirror, but at the same time be thinking about where can I make a move on the Audi if that opportunity arises.
Okay, riding with Neujoks. Ben Constantiouris has been studying all of this, and Niels Neujoks again, Ben, not making progress forward in the way that he would like to. Also, I noticed that another penalty has been dished out lower down to Pavlovsky.
Yeah, a couple of penalties for lap 1 incidents. It's actually the way that we lost Jesus Cecilia. So Cecilia was hit by car Luciano Bedin, and he has been given 3 penalty points and a drive-through. Actually, he was hit one corner before, so that was at the chicane, by Kamil Pelowski. So Pelowski's now taken his drive-through penalty to the tail of the field. Jesus Cecilia retired out of the race because of the contact. Bedouin hasn't taken his drive-through penalty yet. We also lost Luca Lossio and Jack Keithley. So Keithley retired out of the race after contact in lap 1.
That's a shame, because he'd gone well, and Pavlovsky is being disqualified, I understand, for not serving a drive-through in the 3 laps that you have within the regulations. So Pavlovsky is about to face the virtual wrath of the virtual officials.
The official is actually real.
Exactly.
Just looking down through the field, just to put into perspective, Nürburgring 2 weekends ago, the first of the front-engine, mid-engine GT cars is the Mercedes in the 11th place. Basically, the competitiveness that they showed in those damp, wet, in fact awful conditions at Nürburgring has been overturned completely by the beautiful, dry, warm, sunny weather here in Barcelona. And it is your traditional car layout, as we're seeing right now, this battle. Look at it, coming down into turn 14, nowhere to go. Turn 15, nowhere to go. Compose yourself, prepare yourself for 16, and think about a move down into turn 1.
But Capoccia was scrappy, wasn't he? Coming out of 13, and he was wrong into 14, lost a bit of momentum. So Neujoks is closer as they come over the line. Neujoks is taking with him Petrichenko. To the inside line goes Neujoks. He's defended by Capoccia. So Niels Neujoks goes to the outside line. Brakes hard, he's going to do it. Is he all the way around the outside? Yes, job done. Excellent move.
And Petrichenko likewise is going to catch with Capoccia, who was all over the place, but runs rather wide on the exit of turn 3. But good move by Neujoks to the issue, forced the error from the Audi driver, got ahead. Now it's whether Petrichenko can follow through, because Capoccia seems to think, well, I've given up a position, but I'm not going to give up for the remaining part of this race.
And Enzo Benito there, dropping back, I think, in the packs, losing out to Jan-Marcel Dietrich. So Benito 8th in the championship. He's another one that's not really making the progress in this. And David Tonitza, the championship leader, is still down in 10th place. It's a tough day at the office, it seems, if the championship leader, Ben Barnicoat, didn't score in the pros, and David Tonitza, by his fingertips, is clinging on to 1 point here.
And he's not even the lead Ferrari. The lead Ferrari right now is Benito in 8th position.
These two will be representing Ferrari in a couple of weeks' time, which is very, very cool, alongside a certain Charles Leclerc. So just to give you an idea of how Ferrari these drivers are, they are recognised by the Ferrari Young Driver Academy as sim racing drivers and will be partnering real-life Ferrari drivers in a couple of weeks. So really cool to have that level of support from a manufacturer such as Ferrari into sim racing.
Let's hope the sim drivers don't embarrass the contracted Formula 1 driver.
Well, let's take a look at the lap times then from this particular race to what we saw last time. And the gap to the fastest lap of the race is actually now only 0.8 of a second. So our fastest lap in this one is a 44.1. Delatraz managed a 44.8, 44.9 in our pro race. And so that's a lot closer than we saw at the start of the season.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see how the real-world drivers have moved forward, because when we had that combined race at Monza, the real-world, I think we were all a bit surprised, maybe Ben less so than John and I, but by the fact that the real-world drivers just did not deliver. Some big names, and they did not do as well as expected. I think they were surprised, never mind us, and it was the sim stars that came out on top. But right now, Patrick Selva is doing everything he can to get right onto terms with Arthur Camara, but this should put him into the lead of the championship anyway, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what he's done is maintained that half a second gap between first and second. Never really at any point gotten into a position where he could threaten Camara and take the lead. So again, whether he's driving thinking about second place points in the bin, guaranteed, or take a risk, take a chance, make a move which maybe be marginal, and in the process of doing so, either hurt myself, hurt the other car, or even worse, get a penalty, which would take me out of the top 10.
So over the timing line come the two leading McLarens. To the eye, that gap looks a little bit less as they come through. Half a second between Camera and Selva. Patrick Selva still chasing, still trying to force a mistake out of Arthur Camera as they drop down towards turn 1 into the right-hander now. But Selva, Ben, somebody that really starred at Silverstone, didn't he, to score that win early in the season?
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't necessarily, if memory serves, dominate the race. There was lots of action going on, and that kind of helped that victory. But as I say, the McLaren is a very, very strong machine. It suits this kind of circuit, as you can see by just the amount of McLarens at the front of the field. They're also not penalised, like, for instance, the Porsche is in this race. Porsche was strong in the last one. They didn't have ballast. They have ballast in this one, and that's why perhaps they're a bit further down the field.
Porsche did have ballast in the last one, by the way, Ben, 17 kilograms.
Okay.
Back on board with Tonizza as he heads down the hill. Next target is Simonini's Audi. Bonito is ahead. And as far as this lead gap is concerned, it's still hovering around the half a second mark. But what can David Tonizza do now to try to recover this championship lead? He's marred down in 10th place, lost places on the first lap, very nearly into the back of the Audi there, John.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was only 0.2 of a second in that last sector, and it turned out to be a lot less than 0.2 of a second as they were hard on the brakes into down into turn 10. So Tonizza's locked into a group of cars, 5 cars ahead of him, all lapping at the same pace. So even if he's got more natural pace, he's not able to exhibit it. He might think about dropping back fractionally, but then he's got one of the, I can't quite see what it was, I think Mercedes, it is Hassani behind him in the lead Mercedes, so he can't afford to drop back and regroup and then move forward again. So he's got to keep the momentum that he's currently got. But there you can see how many cars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 cars, all in one group, all basically from 6th place backwards.
Where's the Porsche in all of this? Jan-Marcel Dietrich, of course, Porsche carrying 17 kilos in this race, coincidentally the same as in the pro race, but just Ben rightly saying last time at the Nürburgring for the Silvers, there was no penalty for Porsche because of the results they'd achieved at the previous round, not being in the top 3. So they raced ballast free at the Nürburgring. The Porsches have got weight here, and 17 kilos for Jan-Marcel Dietrich, which is why he's struggling in 6th. Actually, he's not doing a bad job with all that weight on the back of Petrichenko in the McLaren, which is a car running without weight, and the ballast given to Porsche by the 2nd place last time out of Eamon Murphy.
Yeah, but I mean, it's this line of cars. It's all nose to tail, nose to tail. So even though you're carrying a ballast, it's probably not hurting you so dramatically. But look at this, what is happening. Noix in 4th position, all over the back of Franchak. So all of a sudden, the battle for 3rd place has run down.
Here's the replay. So Capoccia made a mistake. Noix to the outside line. Capoccia defends. Noix keeps on coming. He'd already got through, hadn't he, at turn 1? And then Capoccia fights back.
Had to concede at the exit of turn 9, and in fact loses another position as a consequence, maybe being just a little bit aspirational. So Noix, what's he going to do now with the 3rd place Lamborghini? Goes one way, goes the other way, goes the long way. That's the way he got past a lap or two earlier, and an easy overtake there. Absolutely, as if the Lamborghini Franchak almost gave that position away without very much resistance.
So Noix now, Ben, up into 3rd place. This is kind of what we've been anticipating all season, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I've just noticed that Enzo Benito spun at the chicane. Not sure if it was helped, but he's dropped to 15th position. A place gained from Noix, but Enzo now out of point scorers.
Indeed so, and not only has he done that, David Tonizza has gained another one, benefiting not only from the spin, but he's also gained another place on merit. So Tonizza is up into 8th place now. Amir Hosseini into 9th. We've hardly touched on Amir Hosseini, who normally is quite quick in the Mercedes, but here he is now into 9th spot. As for 3rd, Niels Noix makes it a McLaren 1-2-3. The lead gap still looks like nothing at all 34 minutes to go for Noyox to catch the race leaders. That's a big ask now, but he is on target, it seems, for the best finish that he will have had this season on the podium.
Well, he's just under 5 seconds behind Silva in second place. He's got clear air, and he's got the opportunity. Nobody around him, nobody to worry about behind, nobody's going to challenge. So whether he had 4.7 seconds as they came through the last timing sector, so will the number 1 McLaren have anything in the tank to try and catch up to Silva? It was 4 seconds to come across the line. It's still 4.6 seconds, so nothing gained in that last sector over the second place McLaren.
So the leaders go through. The gap between the top 2 is down again, 4/10. So little by little, Silva is inching up onto the back of camera. But Ben, now that he's got clear real estate ahead of him, what about Noyox and lap times and sector times? Can he piece this together, do you think, to bring down the gap sufficiently, or is it asking too much?
Well, I think I was looking because the pace that he can run at on his own is going to be better than the pace of the 2 lead cars who are now literally embroiled in their own battle for the lead of the race.
Go on, Ben.
Yeah, so Noyox's lap time is very, very impressive, but it was Kamil Franczak who was slow. That's why he lost out. And I've just had a quick look at Enzo Benito, and he was helped around in his accident at the final couple of turns, so expect a penalty perhaps to Simonini.
Okay, so currently we're on to then lap number 16, and still 32.5 minutes of the race to go. There are the leaders, the gap still looking negligible between them. It's actually stretched out by hundreds over the last couple of corners. In other words, Silva just dropping back slightly from Arthur Camara, who is still under all of this pressure as they are about to drop down the hill once again. So McLaren's 1, 2, 3. Nils Noyox in third, arguably the one to watch now to see whether he can get up with these two. Even if he does, though, the chances are, John, he's going to get stuck. It ain't easy to overtake, as we've seen.
It's not easy to overtake, and the gap is still that 4.6 seconds. It's been that really for just about a lap, and if there's anything left in the tank for Noyox to make progress into this lead battle, and as you see, the lead battle in itself has fractionally opened up as they go down into turn 1. So Noyox, a lot to do in the remaining time.
And then the replay, was that the incident in which Benito got turned around, I suspect. So from the high shot showing what went on at the chicane, inevitable really, because it is a very tight section of the circuit and lots of cars all going for the same bit of circuit. So Enzo Benito was the casualty in all of that, drops down the order accordingly and drops out of the points.
Simonini's taking the penalty for it.
Okay, 3 wide going into turn 1.
It don't work. 3 on there is the consequence.
Yeah.
Just a bit clumsy, not necessary. Again, 3 cars trying to get around turn 3, and the Mercedes in the middle getting squeezed one side and the other, and wisely falls back fractionally behind the Bentley.
So that was Amir Hosseini. We've been talking about making progress and then dropping back again because he got squeezed.
Yeah, and there's Garcia in the Bentley who made a slightly firmer job of it than Hosseini was able to do.
So then at the moment, our top 3, the McLarens, covered by 5 seconds. You're riding on board with Eamon Murphy. That is the recovering Enzo Benito ahead of him. Ferrari versus Porsche. Great GT sports car brands scrap. This 2 legendary makes, and Eamon Murphy on the back of the Ferrari then now as they make the run down towards turn 10. There's a gap on the inside, but Murphy not able to take advantage of that, not close enough.
No, I mean, he just sat back and found his own braking spot, used it, keeps the equidistance to the Ferrari directly ahead. So Benito, I beg your pardon, in the Ferrari in 14th position, and through these turns, the left at 14, the right at 15, the S's of the chicane, then into, there's the Porsche just following the Ferrari, and that is also getting a bit of a hurry up from behind from the Lamborghini of Hensek.
So over the timing line go the race leaders, then this battle lower down, so 14th, 15th, 16th. Jaroslav Honchik comes up to challenge Eamon Murphy, has a look to the inside of the Porsche, can't find a way by. And out of turn 2 they will come then, but right now, all eyes at the front of the field. The gap has grown between Camara and Silva. It's up to 7/10 of a second as we get into the second half of the race now.
Yeah, the gap between second and third actually has come down by 0.4 of a second, which may equate more to Salva maybe making an error or a mistake, because the gap between first and second has gone up by 0.4 of a second. So you have to put that one down to Salva. Somewhere around the lap we didn't catch it, and that's why the gap between first and second and third is altered by 0.4 of a second.
David Greco in the Audi here, busily battling. Now, David Greco didn't get a time in qualifying, so he started absolutely flat last, and he's up to 28th now, which ain't bad going. So David Greco carving his way forward. Ahead, the Bentley there, trying to go right around the outside. Will
Not a great place
as well.
Lot of rubber on the outside of turn 4, then down the hill on this difficult off-camber turn 5. You don't want to be on the outside of the corner again. You've got a lot of rubber, and this is one of the problems in Barcelona. The outside of all these corners, then you get the build-up of rubber that's been sheared off the tyre surface, and you get that pickup, then you lose grip instantaneously.
Greco, one of the really kind of older men of sim racing, a bit of a legend, but a man that's now mid-40s, let's say, and very well respected back in the day. Still side by side battling, and Will Tregurtha's being put to the outside. Will Tregurtha adjusting incredibly well, considering he really didn't have that much sim experience, and was a bit confused as to why he was in the pro sim race rather than in the pro race as a competitor in the SRO series in real world. But such as Greco's experience in sim racing, he is now one of the game developers for Codemasters, trying to make the F1 games feel as realistic as possible, and that's his profession. But he's racing against 16-year-olds in this race. That's the amazing thing about sim racing. You've got guys in their 50s and 16-year-old kids.
What about guys in their 70s then? Any of those around?
I think we should get
Mario did it.
Mario, the most versatile racing driver in the history of the sport.
You can vote, don't forget, for the circuit for the last round. I think we should also start a vote as to whether you should see Watty race on a sim. I think it's a must.
Absolutely.
Yeah, give me the wild card for the last race.
No wild card for me.
Now, this long queue of cars has got Andre Franke in the middle of it, in the Bentley. Ahead of him is Serlac, and it's Will Tregurtha heading the queue, but under huge pressure. Will Tregurtha losing out possibly now as they all line up behind him. 26 3/4 minutes of the race to go.
Yeah, and there's the BMW in second place, and that group of cars. And remember how strong the BMW was 2 weekends ago in the wet weather conditions at Nürburgring, when it was a total overturn of what might be described as the form book for the sim race, when the sim racers really displayed their skill and expertise in this sport.
So this is Eamon Murphy's view. Ben, this is your 1 minute on a driver. Eamon Murphy, is he another sim expert? Because he's yo-yoed a little bit in terms of his performances. What's his background?
Yeah, absolutely. Racing for the Lazarus team, very well-known team, but his main platform would be this. We see him in other things. We see him in, for instance, iRacing or other platforms and endurance racing. He's the kind of guy who sticks to GT cars regardless of the platform. So you don't see too much in single-seater, but he prefers a GT car. And back to Will Tregurtha, who looks to be on the attack, or he's defending from the BMW. Yeah.
And also, do I notice that there's a drive-through heading for Amir Hosseini now as well? We'll keep an eye on this battle, but investigate if you can what Amir Hosseini has done wrong, please.
I think what happened was in that three-car battle coming into turn 2, we saw a car being spat out when the three abreast, and the Mercedes was in that middle of that group, and I think that's where Hosseini might have been penalised.
So that
now remember,
Simonini. Yes, Ben.
You go back to Monza, I think it was. Nils Nyjoks surprised us massively with his pace post-penalty, and he was able to keep up maximum speed throughout the second half of the race when we thought he should be fuel saving and his tyres had gone off. He's doing a similar thing here. The last lap was not a good one, but previous to that he was matching his very, very best throughout the whole race. He's, I think, about to dip into the 45s for the first time, but a lap before that he was a 44.4, which was incredibly fast. The rest of them doing 44.7s and 8s.
Look at this battle going on for 9th place or 8th place Ferrari directly ahead of Garcia in the Bentley. This is what Tunisia does not want. He doesn't want a car coming from behind, putting heat on him. He's trying to make some progress on the 7th place Audi, and all of a sudden Alberto Garcia is giving the Ferrari a wake-up call.
Absolutely right. Garcia crawling all over the back of the man that led the championship coming into this race. David Tunisia still up front. Camera leads Selva, 24 minutes and counting, so the clock ticks on down. But that drive-through for Amir Hosseini is going to cost him dear, is it not? So Amir, who started the season well with a 5th at Silverstone, is going to be another disappointing result, not reflecting the speed that he evinced at Monza in the charity event. Now, where's the next change going to come from? It looks like it's going to be Garcia versus Tunisia, even though the lead gap is stretching out. Trouble is, as we keep on saying, it ain't easy to overtake around here, so Garcia is going to try and force an error out of Tunisia.
Yeah, but you have to stay looking at the body language of the Bentley and the sort of the basic driving action from Garcia. He is the driver who is on the mission right now. Tunisia is driving. All he's got is what he's got. They can't do any more. Sparks flying from the bottom of the Ferrari, but the Bentley is the car that has got the momentum. The gap, by the way, 2nd to 3rd place has dropped from 4.5 seconds down to 3.7 seconds. So bit by bit, Noyaux is making slow progress. 22.5 minutes or so remaining to try and get ahead of Patrick Selva, but whether he'll manage to get it, he might catch, but whether he'll get ahead. Still back with this battle going on. Tunisia and Garcia. This is going to be fun. There's going to be some action sooner than later from the Bentley driver.
I think you're right about that, and that's pace of Noyaux, backing up what Ben was saying, that he just pushes race long, doesn't bother about fuel saving or looking after tyres necessarily. He is still being able to wring the maximum out of that car. Now look back from Tunisia, he is currently in 8th place. There's the Bentley of Alberto Garcia behind, and Garcia closes right up there, goes deep into the corner. Behind the pair of them is Chris Hooker in the Porsche. Remember, the Porsche laden with an extra 17 kilos for this race. So to have, what have we got? 2 in the top 10, not bad going.
So Garcia slightly overran coming into turn 5. That's why the gap has opened up again between himself and Tunisia in 8th position. So by the time they get out of turn 9 and run down the hill into turn 10, the Bentley's going to be more or less the gap between 8th and 9th position. It's showing at 6.66, well, not 0.6 of a second. So very little. Now, that's the Bentley and the Aston Martin again up into turn 4. Franca in 25th position. Wow.
Will Tregurtha, British GT4 class champion, keeps hold of the position, but he's the cork in the bottle, isn't he? He's got, look at that line stacked up behind him. It's like the second half of the field almost, all stuck behind Will Tregurtha.
Yeah. He's got the speed where it is needed. And that's in a straight line in Barcelona.
Yeah, indeed so. And Franca is a bit stuck. Behind him, there is Merchant Solak, then Kieran Prendergast, then you've got David Greco, 28th, as we say, from the back of the grid. There's Axel Petit, there's Ufuk Barbar, Tariq Gamil, Josh Martin, and on and on and on. And Franca is under attack now because Solak gets up the inside of him. Prendergast is the Ferrari next in the queue, but Will Tregurtha, he may not have the pace to be in the top 20, but right now he at least is being able to defend for all he's worth.
Well, he's going to hang on. 20 minutes to go, a long way remaining in this 1 hour race around a very demanding, quite physical Barcelona circuit. Bentley right under the rear wing as they come out of turn 15 through 16. So this is going to be the best opportunity for the Bentley to make that move. And there it goes. Well, that's part of the job done. Whether he can get it done by the end of the straight, the Aston, again, the balance of performance in the Aston favouring the straight bits of the racetrack, whereas the Bentley maybe a bit better under brakes, a bit quicker under entry into the corner, but still the Aston holds it. But contact, inevitable, was going to be the switch from turn 1 to turn 2. Nevertheless, Tregurtha hangs on. His fingernails must be being pulled out by the roots.
Absolutely. Will Tregurtha hangs onto the place then. Great racing this. It's all for 23rd position. And he's still ahead of Andre Franca, who is only just ahead of Solak in the BMW. Prendergast in the Ferrari next in the queue. Now, who is going to get first? Tregurtha runs wide, rattles over the curb, loses momentum. Is that going to be Andre Franca's chance? If it is, It's the outside line, and it doesn't work, and he has to slot back in behind. Goes to the inside, gets a face full of Will Tregurtha. Goes to the outside line, can't do it there. Brilliant defence by Will here.
Yeah, I mean, the Aston has got the performance where it matters. That's in a straight line. No matter what the Bentley's doing, you can see having a look up the inside into turn 9, forget it. Prepare yourself for a good exit and think about doing it down into turn 10. But watch, the Aston Martin's going to stay on the right of screen, left of racetrack coming down, forcing the Bentley Garcia to go the long way around. Look, it's up, it's coming through. Prendergast sort of slid up alongside the BMW, then loses with the undercut as they come out of turn 10.
And Will Tregurtha hangs on to the place. So, as Ben Constantinos was saying a little while ago, he was perhaps initially confused as to why, as a real world driver, he'd been put with all the sim specialists, but he's holding his own here, Ben, isn't he? He's doing a pretty decent job of defending.
Absolutely. And again, that kind of real world experience of how to race someone coming into the 4. He's not necessarily got the ultimate pace of extracting every 10th out of the sim, but he knows where to place his car around Barcelona so not to lose a position. It's great to see.
Franca again to the outside line. Is he going to get it done this time? He's got his nose in front at 1. He's got the car ahead at 2. And Tregurtha is forced offline, so suddenly they're going to come streaming past him. Bentley goes by, the BMW of Solak goes by, and Tregurtha tries to defend as Kieran Prendergast comes up on the outside line as well. Tregurtha has not given up though, and he's still trying to defend. David Greco now is in his mirrors. On the outside line is the Ferrari, so he's got one to his left, he's got one behind him, breathing down his neck. Life's not going to get any easier for Will Tregurtha, but Franca and Solak, what he finally have got through.
Yeah, I mean, finally the cork has popped, and 2 cars got ahead of Tregurtha, and in fact, it's going to be more than that by the time they come to the completion of the lap. I mean, you can defend and defend for every. Oh, who was that? Went very wide in turn 7.
David Greco, wasn't it?
I don't know, just suddenly, all of a sudden, the car way off the line, onto the dirty stuff, and they're coming up the hill. Look at this mess up into turn 9. Cars everywhere. I mean, some of those was a result of running very wide through turn 7 and 8, getting rubbish on your tires, loss of grip. But now it's the Bentley who's made it through, followed by the BMW. So whether the BMW was able to do much at all with the Bentley, I somehow doubt it. Andrew Franca in the Bentley will, in theory, now he's got clear of that battle with the Aston Martin, which went on and on and on frustratingly, because the Bentley quicker in the lap, but not quick enough where it counted, but forced the issue eventually into turn 1 and got the deal done at the exit of turn 2.
Now, there's Andre Franca going over the timing line. The best that we've had out of him so far this year has been 16th. There, further up the order, is the Alberto Garcia Bentley, still on the back of Tonitza, and Chris Hooker has closed right up to the pair of them now. So Tonitza here is in jeopardy of losing not 1 but now 2 places before the very end, and with it would go the hope of points and of course retaining the championship lead.
I thought Tonitza would have been under even bigger pressure. I thought Garcia might have actually found a way around the Ferrari, but Tonitza's dug in, and he's now, as a consequence, putting the Bentley down, which is in turn allowing Hurtke in the Porsche to close up. The Porsche, its own natural pace wasn't going to be sufficient. It was the reasons for that run down.
Now this
David,
is
just to put into perspective, the difference in pace, when they were all stuck behind Tregurtha, they were doing 49.5s in free air. Andrea Franca managed to do a 47.3, so found 2.5 seconds over just uncorking himself.
Did you not hear the pop and the cork came out of the bottle?
What about Neujoks, Ben? What are his lap times looking like? Because he seems to have plateaued a bit now. He brought the gap down, but he's now struggling to bring it down by much more. What's going on?
It's because the other two are managing to match him. They will know from all the data they're given, they'll know exactly what time that Neujoks is putting in. They'll be able to see the gap real time, and therefore they just, if they have the ability, they can match him. And that's every so often Selva loses a couple of tenths, but it's not really enough to bring that into a battle like we see here. If Petrenko can get past Franzak, that's McLaren 1, 2, 3, 4.
It is indeed. Just remind me as well, I know we've touched on this in earlier rounds of the championship, as you look at Petruchenko all over the back of Franchak, can drivers talk to each other? So could Selva and Camara discuss the fact that, discuss is the wrong word, but realise that Neujoks is closing and quickly bark instructions to each other to make a plan, or does it not work like that?
They could certainly have that set up if they wanted to. In the same way that we have our commentary booth, they can have a room in which they're chatting to. It's not in the game like some other platforms have it, but you could have it set up in many different ways.
It is doable. Okay, thank you, Ben. 14 minutes to go, and here Kamil Franczak goes through with Juri Petrichenko having much his best showing of the championship thus far, looking to make it. McLaren's wall-to-wall in the top 4. Don't bet against it.
Petrichenko's obviously got the pace, as you know, because McLaren's have got the pace all afternoon. Cameron dominating, Selva having a moment, and now Neujoks in third place. So could Petrichenko find a way past Franczak in the Lamborghini? If you want to put your money on it, I would say yes. 13 and a half minutes to go, not an awful lot of time to get the job done, but look, he can't run any closer to the Lamborghini than he's currently doing, other than when he gets the car up alongside the Lamborghini to take away that 4th place.
Franczak wasn't a great defender when Neujoks came up to have a go at him. Let's see what happens if and when Petrichenko gets absolutely close enough to make a move. Jan-Marcel Dietrich is 6th in the best of the Porsches, but he's not close enough to capitalise, I don't think. We're having another drive-through penalty offered, and it is to 86 this time, which is Ufuk Baba, the BMW driver, for again causing a collision.
Just looking at various battles going through the field. Garcia in the Bentley chasing Tonitsa. That one was going on. The battle area, back for 3rd place. So Petrichenko closes. I thought maybe coming out of turn 9 he would have a run down the inside into turn 10. Obviously he didn't, so the situation remains as it has been all through these last few laps. But again, coming into turn 16, the straight line speed of the Lamborghini, that V10 engine, naturally aspirated against the turbocharged but the more slippery, arguably aerodynamic McLaren. Where's the gain? In the straight line, well, if it's a couple of maybe feet or maybe a couple of meters at most, not much in it. Bit more bite in the front of the McLaren as it turns into turn 1 and turn 2. So he makes up the ground in the lower speed corners. Now under that rear wing coming through turn 3, has to fall back fractionally as the front end just begins to slowly wash out. And that penalises him as he comes to the braking zone into turn 4, and it allows Franczak to have a momentary draw on his breath and think, wow, we got away with that one again.
But for how much longer? 12 minutes from the clock. Petrichenko all over the back of the Lamborghini as they drop down the hill, approaching 7 o'clock in local time for the settings within the game. The lead gap has really markedly opened up, hasn't it? Camera to Selva now, 1.9 seconds. So Neujoks perhaps does have a chance of catching the 2nd place car. Certainly not the race leader, because Arthur Camera finally looks as though he is going to score a race win and his best haul of points of the championship.
You mentioned that penalty to the 86 car for Barber. Yeah. It actually was part of that massive battle that we saw led by Will Tregurtha. He made contact with the Ferrari of Kieran Prendergast. Prendergast has basically retired out of all of our races, I think, with various contacts. Very upset to have been basically retired out of this race, as well as Barber takes his penalty and drops the tail of the field. Axel Petit was another pit visitor last time through, presumably to repair some damage. So we've had about 10 cars now retire or pit out of this race with various issues.
Race of attrition and all that. Okay, thank you, Ben. Enzo Benito here, struggling, isn't he? Bearing in mind that he started 5th on the grid. I know he got turned around early in the race, which didn't help life, but he, like others, has struggled to make amends to get back through the pack. David Tonitsa is still 8th, the man that came into this leading the championship. So what can he salvage? He's having to defend places at the moment rather than think about gaining anything. But with Capoccia down in 7th after a mistake, it's another jumbled order. But for Camera, it is looking like it's going to be his day of days, and the best we've seen all year out of Niels Neujoks. Now, what about this? Garcia still on the back of Tonitsa, Chris Hooker on the back of the Bentley. David Tonitsa still there in 8th place, and he's just opened up the margin by a length, maybe 2.
Again, I mean, what Tonitsa is doing is he's just consolidating his position. He's got no pace. He can't move forward. He's not in a position to challenge for 7th position, but what he has got is enough pace to really frustrate Garcia and the Bentley. The Bentley, again, quicker, potentially quicker in an overall lap in clear air, but the problem he's got is he can't find a way to get ahead of Tonitsa. Tonitsa's done what we saw Delatraz do in the pro race, driving with his head, using the car's strengths to his benefit and mitigating any errors or many areas where the Bentley is clearly the quicker of the two cars but can't find the space. Now up the inside, runs wide. Garcia makes an error. Can the Porsche? No, not quite. It looked like the Porsche maybe was able to do something, and Garcia knock him back to 10th place. There's this battle for third overall, and you have to think. Yes, Petrochenko, beg your pardon. Petrochenko in 5th, looking to find a way past 4th place Lamborghini.
So it is Kamil Franchak staying ahead. He goes to the inside line to defend on the run to turn 1 to the outside line. Way off the road goes Petrochenko, and he's going to swoop through and do it this time. Job done just as Neuerks went round the outside to take a place away from Franchak. So another McLaren has done the same. These are going to be mighty heavy cars going into the last round, wherever you decide that will be, because it's going to be McLaren's 1, 2, 3, now 4. So the maximum success weight will go to the McLaren brand. It could bite against them if they're fighting for a championship, some of those drivers. However, right now, Petrochenko is thinking about himself, he's thinking about points, and he's thinking about getting his best result of the championship, and he is on target for 4th place.
The thing that I would have to question is that overtake, a great overtake in itself, but here there's cars so far on the verge of what I would call track limit abuse that maybe it could be seen, maybe give that position up. That's up to the race director to decide whether there was a case to be answered. Maybe it'll just be given a bye and let's get on with the motor racing and stop complicating it with penalties.
Well, the great thing about sim racing is all track limits are taken care of by the game. All of the collisions are taken care of by the human, in which case Richard Norbury with us again. And so any discretion on track limits is instantly recognised and penalised. And I don't think there even in the regulations is an allowance for a human to do a track limit penalty. Totally agree with you, Watty, that really isn't a piece of track you should be using, but the game doesn't recognise that.
Well, I mean, it's one of those areas that I've had people tell me, people who are involved in organising events, who control events, about track limit abuse, and maybe there should be something introduced into the game to bring more discipline into the driving. I mean, it was a great overtake, everything was worked out perfectly, but he was well off coming down here into turn 1. In my opinion, that was a pass that might have been considered to be give it back up, because you've just took too much of what is not racetrack to make that overtake.
Another good battle in the background here worth looking at. Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Porsche versus Andrea Capoccia. Now Capoccia has had a win. He's 4th in the championship, but got roughed up early on and fell down the order. He's 7th therefore. Another place would help for points with only one more round to go at the end of this, as they come then now down towards the loop of turns 5, 6, 7, mid part of the lap. But the Porsche of Jan-Marcel Dietrich doing a good job actually of hanging on to position. He's another driver that sort of yo-yoed a little bit in terms of results, but his best was a 6th last time out at the Nürburgring, and he looks like he's possibly going to replicate that if he can keep Capoccia behind him for another 6 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the Porsche, and just doing what we've seen so many drivers this afternoon do to Nizza, whatever, just they're consolidating what they've got. They haven't got anything more they can do, but they're under threat. So whether the Audi will ultimately make it into the top 6 and get ahead of the Porsche, 5 minutes to go, is a mute question. I think the Porsche's got enough in the tank in terms of its abilities and speed where it counts again round this Barcelona racetrack. 2.8 miles, 4.6 kilometers in the varying temperature and conditions which have such an outcome in the overall performance of any given car.
On board with Capoccia as he comes over the line. Is he going to be able in 5 more minutes to get onto terms with the Porsche of Jan-Marcel Dietrich and have a go? He's closing down to turn 1, goes to the outside line. He's still got some straight in which he can make the move. He turns in, but no, the Porsche breaks even later on the inside line and goes back ahead. So Dietrich hangs on to position. Capoccia still stuck 7th, can't find a way past.
And what was interesting to me, David, just on that onboard shot from the Audi cockpit, there is no peripheral vision. You couldn't see where the Porsche was, whereas if you're in a rail car race situation, you would have some visual contact with the car that you were trying to make a move on. So that is one of the areas within sim driving that is different from real racing.
Ben, go back to a point you were making for us in the pro race. You talked about a driver having 3 screens. So he's 1 effectively the windscreen and the others the side windows or mirrors, or what do they do with those 3 screens in that case?
Yeah, you have 3 real solutions in sim racing. You have a single screen, which is your usual TV, as big as you can make it. You can fiddle around with your field and your position, your driving position, to be closer, so you get a better sense of speed. Further back, so you get the ability to look out through the side windows on your single screen. Or you have 3 screens, so as you say, front and then left and right, to be able to turn your actual head to go left and right. Okay. The best solution for me, though, VR goggles, which means effectively wherever you point your head, you are seeing. It gives you a 3D feel as well for braking zones, and when you're doing something like an oval race, it helps so much to know exactly where those cars are. You do get a little bit of sound as well. You can hear a car to your left or your right, but really the eyes are what you want to be relying upon.
And Ben Barnicoat was telling us on the podcast that we recorded the other day that he's bought himself some blue spectacles, some sort of anti-glare, because you're spending so much time looking at this enormous bright screen, it starts to hurt your eyes.
I guess that would help a lot. Definitely hurts your head. Traffic, by the way, for Patrick Selva in second position, and that is allowing Nils Noljoks to get a lot closer. The gap down to 6.5 tenths now.
Okay, and we've also got Honchik here ahead of Bonito, as you've seen. So the Lamborghini up into 13th, and Enzo Bonito from 5th on the grid down into 14th position. So for 3rd, then, Nils Noljoks on the back of Patrick Selva, almost 0.6 of a second between the two.
Yeah, that's a very possible overtake. Well, just under 3 minutes of the race, 1.5 laps for happens to be. So Arthur with a 2.6 seconds advantage over Selva, but who is now thinking backwards, not thinking forward, as he's under threat from Noljoks.
So
Camera coming through the last corners now, so it will be 2 laps, I think. He's just coming through the last turn now.
Okay, so Selva is under attack, seemingly from Noljoks. Here they are then, as over the timing line, camera is away and gone. Selva is 0.462 of a second up. Again, relentless pace of Noljoks. He pushed, he got into the top 3, and he's kept on pushing. Here they come, down towards turn 1. So Selva now, John, is under real pressure, isn't he?
Yes, but what Noljoks has to do, I know it's easy to say and it's very difficult to do. You saw the speed in which he closed down second place Selva. If he allows himself to be dictated by Selva, then he'll lose that pace. He'll be then driving at the pace of second place Selva rather than the pace that he himself was generating in clearer air. So you have to make your move as quickly as possible, and that's about thinking about where you might have more strength than the second place Selva's car has. That's what you have to do when you're driving a racing car. It isn't just about the physical aspect about it. You need to think to where you can make a move, where it might be possible. More importantly, maybe to think or know where it isn't possible.
So Noljoks here trying to force a mistake out of Selva, who is possibly thinking about banking points. He doesn't want to give away a place, but he doesn't want to get involved in a battle and risk not finishing at all. Ignore the Bentley in the background, that is a lap back. All of this squabbling is playing into the hands of Arthur Camara, who looks set to have a first McLaren win, because don't forget, although he won at Monza, that was when he had a Mercedes. He's been a McLaren driver for the purposes of the championship, but for that charity race, he drove a different brand altogether. So Arthur Camara for the G2 Esports team leads the way. Patrick Selva then in second spot, comes down the hill for Racing on 3, and Nils Noljoks, another of the G2 Esports drivers, there in third place. So it's going to be one more lap, isn't it? This is it, over the timing line.
Mr. Selva's in those last sort of 3 corners, 14, 15, 16, is always been able to just give himself enough of a margin that when they come on to then down into turn 1 and into turn 2, that he's got that margin enough to keep Noljoks behind him. Now into the long turn 3. Noljoks is closing, you can see, but in the latter part of the corner, the gap spreads out. That's simply because the aero effect on the third place McLaren is pushing the front of the McLaren wider than Noljoks would like it to do, and consequently that's where he's losing maybe a couple of tenths of a second.
So can Noljoks find a way by? He's running out of options here, Ben, isn't he, on this, the last lap?
Absolutely, his pace way better than the two guys ahead. Camera even backing off on that last lap, although he doesn't necessarily need to push now. And Noyaux really doesn't have that many opportunities left in terms of overtaking opportunities. I'm just a bit worried about McLaren come to the last race in the championship. They're going to be so heavy.
Absolutely right. And seeing that one of the options is a rather hilly circuit like Bathurst that you could vote for, that's really going to hurt them there. A flat circuit might not be quite so bad, but anyway, we'll talk about voting post-race, because right now it is still game on for second. Niels Noyaux here looking to try to dislodge Patrick Selva from second place. Ahead of them, remember, it is going to be Arthur Camara for gold, Selva for silver, and Noyaux for bronze, seemingly as they head towards the completion of the last lap. Then McLaren's absolutely dominant in this fourth round of the Silver Series, and it is going to be 4 races, 4 different winners, mirroring what we have in Pro. Checkered flag at the ready. Arthur Camara comes out of turn 16 up to the checkered flag. Arthur Camara wins at Barcelona. Who is going to be second? Is it going to be Selva? Yes, it is. Patrick Selva takes second, Niels Noyaux third, and for fourth place, some way back, but again, the best that we've seen out of him all year, and also reflecting the pace of McLaren, Yuri Petrichenko is on target for fourth place. Fifth will go the way of Kamil Franchak, and sixth it will be Jan-Marcel Dietrich here ahead of Andrea Capoccia. Then David Tonitza for eighth place, and not the result he wanted, but at least he salvages points out of this. No, he doesn't get eighth. Alberto Garcia takes eighth place. Ninth is Chris Hürker, 10th is Tobias Pfeffer, and Tonitza ends up 11th, dumped down to 11th on the last lap out of the points now.
Was that a contact that led to Tonitza losing those positions, or was just he made a mistake and he just got out fumbled? That we didn't see on screen, but clearly a very, very damaging final lap for championship, or was championship leader Tonitza.
Ben, what can you unravel from within the game?
He got turned around at the chicane at the last time, exactly the same as his teammate Benito mid-race. So that was really disappointing for Enzo.
Indeed so, and disappointing for David Tonitza, who actually took the flag in the pits, looking at that graphic. We've got Tariq Gamil here, still busy squabbling with Andre Franke. This is for 22nd and 23rd places, so no points for Tonitza, and that's going to hurt him in the championship, as we say. Now just keep an eye on this Bentley fight, 22nd and 23rd, as they come down towards the chicane. Others have finished their races, but out of that Bentley squabble, who is it going to be? Andre Franke should be able to hang on to the place. Yes, he does. Runs a little bit wide out of turn 16, but he stays ahead of Tariq Gamil as they come across the line. So a very good race for Arthur Camara to score a first victory. Patrick Selva to take over the lead of the championship. He's second in the race ahead of Niels Noyaux third, his best showing of the season. Yuri Petrichenko taking fourth, his best showing of the championship thus far. And then behind in fifth place, Kamil Franchak, who also records one of his best finishes. Not the best, but he had a fourth. A fifth is a pretty decent effort. Sixth for the second race in a row, Jan-Marcel Dietrich ahead of Andrea Capoccia, then Alberto Garcia from Chris Hürker, and Tobias Pfeffer rounds out the top 10. David Tonitza then gives up the championship lead out of the points, finishes in 11th spot. 12th goes the way of Giovanni De Salvo ahead of Honchik, Bonito 14th, Josh Parker 15th from Pitchers, Al-Sabti, Murphy, Vromont, and Tim Heinemann in the HWA Race Lab Mercedes takes 20th place. So drama all the way through as expected, but for Arthur Camara, mighty impressive job done there to control the pace, to make sure that he was able to keep the other McLarens at bay. But the point that we've been making during that race is that you take the weight for finishing first, second or third. Well, McLarens block out the top three, so you add all the weight together, they are going to be mighty heavy cars going into the final round of the championship, and that is for you to decide the venue. The options will be posted later this evening to give you a bit of a sneak preview. Suzuka, Kyalami, Laguna Seca and Bathurst. Take your pick. All of them are fantastic, but voting starts this evening. We've enjoyed some great racing at Barcelona, getting a replay there of how David Tonitza came to grief, and it might be that 1 or 2 penalties fly as a consequence of that. Jack, if you came to Barcelona virtually as a real championship leader, it's not been your day. Ben Barnicoat suffered, didn't score points, and now David Tonitza in the wars as well. But what it does do is set us up really nicely for the final round of the championship, which has been moved back a week just to make the point again, to the 21st of June.
Yeah, I think if you arrive at any SRO esports weekend as the championship leader, you're going to be in a bit of trouble, aren't you? So now it's Patrick Selva's turn to have that concern going into the final race in 3 weeks' time. He leads the championship on 45 points, but only 2 points ahead of Arthur Camara. And you mentioned that his season has been sort of up and down, and he had the extra weight for Spa and the rain in Nürburgring, but he's there on 43 points, 2 points behind Selva, and they've got a decent lead now over Andrea Capoccia, who is on 31 points. So Camara in second, 12 points ahead of Capoccia, and now David Tonitza tied on 31 points after Tonitza lost those 4 points right at the end. But a great drive from Arthur Camara. Patrick Selva, I think driver of the day, John, has to go the way of Nils Noyaux, would you say?
Very good drive. I mean, it was just an illustration of what given a competitive car can do. And of course, starting that on the third row of the grid, not desperate, but the difficulty, of course, here in Barcelona, regardless, sim racing, real-time racing, it is the nature of the racetrack that dictates who will finish where. Other racetracks, you've got opportunities, but here in Barcelona, your grid position is a big bearing on where you're going to finish. So to start in the third row of the grid and to finish third, I think be happy enough with that day's work.
Well, let's speak to Arthur Camara, our race winner, and now the man up to second in the championship. Arthur, congratulations. How was that race for you?
Yeah, hi everyone. That was quite a good race for me, I have to say. Securing my first win for G2 Esports is a big honor for me. And it was hard fought with Patrick, who was staying close to me, like just until halfway through the race, and he was not letting go up until then. And after that, I felt that I was losing his breath in my neck, and I was just able to gain 10th by 10th, and build a small gap, which I then just had to, how do you say? I just had to go with it till the end.
Yeah, so you're now 2 points off Patrick at the top of the championship. Talk us through your season, because obviously the charity race went very well, Silverstone went well, but it's been a bit difficult since then.
Yeah, well, yes, obviously the charity race went well, and that eventually gave me the opportunity to create a team with Neil, and which was very important for me. And then, I mean, first race in Silverstone, Patrick got, the circumstances were that Patrick got, I have, so to say, an easy lead because Niels and Jura collided, and I was stuck behind Amir. Then second race, obviously, I think it was Spa. We were loaded with kilos. There was just no pace to be found. Nürburgring was honestly a bit disappointing, but I definitely got caught out by the weather and the drive-through I got by apparently positioning myself wrong at the start was ending it for me there. And Barcelona finally showed the pace that me and Niels got again, and we're happy. At least I'm happy to have secured the win now.
Great. Well, congratulations on that one. Let's speak to Niels because he is here as well. What a drive, Niels. You had quite the pace. Did it all go wrong in qualifying for you today?
Yeah, I guess I just have to have something in every race this season. So despite being P3 and just missing out on P2 in the end, I'm still very happy that I finally got some points in. I think they were way more important than one of the big results. So yeah, for now, this is fine. Much more relaxed than last time.
Yeah, absolutely. David, do you have anything to add?
Only that I suspect, in a sense, Niels, you wish that result had come a lot sooner, because we've always been expecting great pace from you. And as you say, in every race, something has happened. Now you've had this podium result, like the season to be another 5 races maybe, and start adding to the tally.
I mean, with a grid we have here, so all the drivers, this is one of the best series I've been in, so I could go for another 20 races if you wanted me to. Apart from that, sure, results should have come earlier, but yeah, I think first race was unfortunate for several occasions, even though there was some catching up. It was nice to watch. Penalty in the end, unfortunate, and, well, maybe deserved. But I think I forgot about Nürburgring completely because, yeah, that fell into the water pretty much. And Spa, yeah, no chance there because of the penalty weight. And whatever the next track will be with the 50 kilos added, I think we're pretty much out there.
Okay. Well, do you have any preference, by the way, if it were Kyalami, Suzuka, Bathurst, or Laguna Seca?
By now, with the 50 kilos, I think our best shot is if everybody else crashes. So Bathurst, if it was for me.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Niels. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
So yeah, they're all going to be fairly hilly circuits. Actually, now I think about it, David, none of them are going to be great for that. You can go to the SRO social media this evening. That's where you go to vote whether you want Kyalami, Suzuka, Bathurst, or Laguna Seca. So head over to SRO on social media. Are you going to be casting a vote, David, or is that against the rules? I don't know. Which one would you go for? That's a stupid question, isn't it?
Well, no, I'm slightly torn now. It was going to be Bathurst, but because I enjoyed Kyalami last year, and you never know what weather might be set for Kyalami because we had torrential rain. That could be another factor. So it's Bathurst or Kyalami for me. I'm not quite sure which way to lean.
Okay,
I'll ponder.
Ben Constanduros, your final thoughts from the day, and also give us a track.
It's really nice to have the pros getting up onto Silver's pace. I think we had two very, very entertaining races, and kind of I can't wait now to the 21st of June. It's a shame that it's got to be so long, but that's okay. We can do it. Track-wise, I don't even know how Kyalami goes these days. It's been modified so much, but if it mirrors the real-world weather, that could be very interesting. But I think Bathurst for me is one of my favourites that I've never been to. So yeah, that was one for me.
Okay, Watty, your final thoughts of the day, and which track would you like? And have you started making lunch yet?
I have actually. It's in the oven already. During that moment when you had a long monologue, so I had time to prepare it, peel the potatoes, get the vegetables ready. It's all in the oven. Typical Barcelona events, very much dictated by your qualifying. And you come to expect that, but nevertheless, domination in the pro race and the sim race by McLaren, very, very impressive indeed. Illustrates how far McLaren have come with the development of the 720S. But in the pro race, what a great drive by Delatraz! Never put a foot wrong. He was cool, calm, and collected. And that leads me then into my circuit for the final round. And there's got to be California Dreaming, Laguna Seca. Any excuse to go to America, to go to California, I'll take it in a heartbeat.
Okay, there we go then. So on that basis, I will go for Suzuka, because then we've all voted for one of each, and I love Suzuka as well. Brilliant racetrack. Right, thank you very much for joining us for round 4 of the SRO Esport GT Series. We'll be back in 3 weeks' time for the title decider. The track is up to you. Those are the choices: Kyalami, Suzuka, Bathurst, or Laguna Seca. Head to the SRO social media channels to vote there. And when we arrive, wherever we arrive, the Pro class is being headed by Louis Delatraz, 10 points ahead of Marcucci, with Ben Barnicoat a little bit adrift in 3rd position. But it's all up for grabs because the drivers who have done well here are going to have the extra weight for that final round. In the Silver Cup, it's now Patrick Selva leading, 2 points ahead of Arthur Camara. Then quite a big gap back of 12 points to Capoccia and former title leader David Tonitza. But we've seen how often things can swing around over the course of these 1 hour races. 2 more to come, and that will be in 3 weeks' time, 21st of June, Sunday the 21st of June. We will see you then for the grand finale of the SRO Esports GT Series.